Welcome everybody to the summer retreat. Make it June 24th, 5th, Tuesday. Thank you for attending. It being a summer retreat, we were all going to wear our Speedos, but we decided not to. I didn't feel like that'd be conducive to a good meeting. So thank you for attending. If you would, roll call. David Harwood.
Here.
Jack Carey.
Here.
Pete Greedy. Here. Doug Madison. Here. And Melissa Baker.
Here.
Okay, everybody's in attendance. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lead off with Town Manager Shane Fox.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I want to call Planning Director Kevin Rothrock to start us off with the consideration of setting a public hearing for conditional zoning of our Green Hill property. So I'll ask Kevin to come up and speak to you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I would, ladies and gentlemen, hearing number 3, there's public speaking is not allowed. This is strictly for the council and department heads to go over what has taken place over the past months and to schedule things upcoming for the next 6 months. So if you have any comments, I will have to ask you to hold those. At the break, you can speak to the council members individually or at a later date. Okay? Thank you.
Mayor and Council, you've got in front of you, and I think Shane's got it up here too, the petition for a conditional zoning district rezoning application for the Green Hill water tank site. Property is currently zoned R15, single family. The town is looking to rezone that to conditional zoning, single family, to erect an 80-foot utility pole for the purpose of installing antennas for town public communications for improved inoperability. In addition to the application, you'll find the draft ordinance that's been put together. And in addition to the draft ordinance is I think it should be there, is an attachment, Exhibit B, which would list the conditions that go along with the request. So with that, we make a request of council if you'd like to set a date for a public hearing to consider the application.
What date were you looking at, Kevin?
July 23rd.
July 23rd.
Yeah, it would be a special
And this
meeting.
would be a public hearing.
It would be. And
Will this be heard on the planning board?
yeah, so the planning board, in response to what you decide here today, we would schedule a planning board meeting prior. And based on that date, we would look at July 11th
For planning.
for planning board.
If the council approves.
If the council moves forward with setting a date for the public hearing, we would look for a July 11th, that's a Thursday. The normal time is July 18th, but I'm going to be out of town, we'll not be able to attend, so I'm going to be here for that meeting. So July 11th is where we try to go with planning board.
So at that time, the public will have the opportunity to speak at both meetings.
Yes, and we'll also re-advertise for planning board, and then based on the completion of that meeting, then we'll re-advertise again for the public hearing or whenever you set the date.
You will have full presentations
Yes,
for planning and council.
sure will.
Council thoughts? Motion to approve the public hearing date? So moved. Sir. We have a first, we have a second. And David Harwood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. attendance. There will be a planning board meeting set for July 11th, which is Thursday, for public's comments and for the official presentation by the town of Blowing Rock on what they're wanting or proposing to do. And then from there, it'll be heard by the town council on July 23rd. Same scenario, public hearing, public will be able to speak on a presentation that has been set forward with questions and answers. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Back to you, Mr. Fox.
Absolutely. So we just finished obviously number 3 here, so we'll start now with our summer retreat. So in typical fashion, we've got a pretty lengthy agenda here of items to go over. We'll start with kind of an update on our current projects that we have, along with what's been discussed at the winter retreat, kind of a recap, so to speak. And then we'll go into some new items and next steps and what that looks like, kind of planning towards anticipation towards our January retreat. So as you said, Mayor, anticipation of the next 6 months as well. So update on current projects. We'll go over Main Street project and where we are with water and sewer. We'll then talk about Maple Street, the next steps on that at 221 with water and sewer. Discussion of paving and crosswalks as we're putting back the street, what that looks like. Chestnut Sewer, opportunity there, I think, to replace an aging line and opportunity for some potential expansion. Laurel Lane Spillway update, handrails, and then Mr. Rothrock will give us an update on the wayfinding. Then we'll go into a recap of our winter retreat and what I call here new items and next steps. Update of USDA and where we are with the USDA loan and our water and wastewater plant project. Memorial Park Phase 2 discussion and some opportunities there to share some insight to where we want to go next with Memorial Park. Parking update, and then again planning with an update on downtown subcommittee. And then we'll finalize it here with a number of things. Hopefully time will allow for us to planning ahead towards 2025 with all things substantial as we may go into what would look like a potential bond. And then other items, TDA ordinance, impact fees, and employee housing. So fairly lengthy list of things here that I think we've got time to go over. So, any questions so far on the agenda? All right, so Main Street project. So I'm sure everybody is aware that our Main Street has been under construction now for the last year or so with water and sewer replacement lines. So a little bit of background on our water line replacement, 9,200 linear feet. It's almost 2 miles end to end of 8-inch water line replacement. That's replacement of the hydrants, valves, and our PRVs along the stretch from South Main to North Main. And the main line is now complete. So the 8-inch line is complete. They're testing it today, that last segment. So if you've seen them out working today, they did have, I think, an airlock situation that they had to take care of. They've been testing that line. And so that line should be tested and approved and certified within the next couple of days, which means they'll start tying. So they're going to start a little bit different than what we had anticipated. While they're down in this area, they're going to go ahead and start totally work their way back up and do our tie-ins. And then as we get into the next month or so, they'll kind of look at the scheduling depending on what day of the week, and they may pop back in and out of town at the first of the week to allow for the end of the week to try to get someone out of the roadway. So the contractor, Iron Mountain, we've worked with on a number of projects. They're fantastic to work with, especially with traffic control, and they'll do whatever we need them to do to be accommodating to keep the traffic manageable. Have put out a couple updates to you all. No work next week during July 4th, so you won't have any work next week during the week of the 4th. And then there'll be no work primarily on Fridays. There'll be some in the morning time, perhaps cleanup. Nothing during the parade of homes and nothing during the symphony. So we won't have any work going on during those days. Just typical traffic, busy days, trying to keep everybody out of the roadway as much as we can. So the service tie-ins will take about 60 days. So we're now towards the end of June. That's going to be July to August. And then August into September is our punch list. So our completion date on the project is September the 17th. We have no plans of going past that. We'll have it completed by then. So the water piece, main line is now complete. Certifying the last section, testing is going on right now. So we have no doubts that that'll pass. And then tie-ins are starting tomorrow is the plan, and that'll be on North Main to start with. Sewer line, there was 2 sections of sewer line that was replaced. Yes, sir.
When they do the tie-ins, are they gonna make everything live as they go up?
Yes. Yeah. So, and they're hoping to get 2 a day on the typical ones, is what I was told this morning. They think they can get 2 tie-ins per day, 2 services per day. There's going to be some disruption, especially when they get to the main intersections of having to go through and tie those mains in. More than likely, those are at least a day, maybe 2 days, depending on like Sunset going through that. Spider web of lines in that area, but yeah, they're hoping to get 2 tie-ins per day. And from my understanding, and I'll ask Matt, they'll be live when they complete them. I mean, they're moving, they're converting them over.
Once it's all certified, they tie it over, it'll be done. Whoever gets tied to it will be on the line.
So Shane,
Yes, ma'am.
instead of starting at Brom, they're starting at Chatola.
They're starting at Chatola, and then more than likely, the first of the week, they'll probably pop down to Brom in this area. This is the heaviest traffic area, so they're gonna try to hit these in the early part of the week, and then go back and hit the outlying areas during the end of the week, middle to the end of the week, just to keep the traffic at a minimum, traffic control at a minimum. Sewer line work is complete as well, so that was completed a number of weeks back. It was completed just right out here at, here in front of us at Maple Street. And so sewer line work is complete, tie-ins are complete as well, so the sewer line work for the entire project is complete. So really what's left is the water service tie-ins and then our punch list, what that looks like. So those are the last kind of pieces of the project. So again, sewer line is complete. So I put here it's on schedule, it is. We fully expect it to be completed by the end of August or the 1st of September with those punch list items. We are currently trending under budget, approximately $200,000. We've had some savings on unit pricing that we were not anticipating. And so we are hoping, and we are in the preliminary stages right now of getting state approval. Again, to kind of back up, this $4.8 million was graciously awarded to us thanks to our General Assembly folks. Representative Pickett and Heiss was gracious enough to award the town the $4.8 million in the budget year before last. And so if we come in the budget, that's a good thing, but we'd also like to utilize all $4.8 million in it. So we've already petitioned the state, we've got preliminary approval to utilize any monies left over on the Main Street project towards Maple Street. So when we went back to 2014 and we issued our bonds, Maple Street water line and sewer line replacement, along with Green Street water line replacement, were both included. And so as they're working here downtown, we would like to go ahead and utilize those monies to complete Maple Street. Again, that would complete Maple Street water and sewer from Sunset to Main Street. Sunset, of course, was completed in 19. So at this point, we're believing that we'll have approximately $200,000. Maple Street's around $350,000, so there's going to be a little bit of a gap there. That being said, I put a couple numbers up here on the board of our phase 4 of the bond that we have not spent. So we have about $600,000 in water money that we haven't spent. So if we've got a $150,000-ish gap, then my proposal would be to you all, and of course we'll bring it to you formally, is to go ahead and utilize that 150-ish over to Maple Street and go ahead and have that project completed as well. We can add that as an amendment to the current contract with the current contractor. They're already mobilized, they're already here. They could complete that work into early fall and have that work complete as well. Similar to that is 221 to Green Street. Where you mentioned Green Street. Green Street is on the schedule to be replaced, water lines to be replaced as part of the bond. And again, so that's accounting for over here as well. So what we haven't done is replace the line from Main Street to Green Street. So if you recall back during COVID, we replaced the PRV at Green Street 221, which is our most significant PRV that we have. Vault was set there. So we now have a vault set with a PRV that's included in that, but we don't have a new line between that PRV and Main Street. And so I'll ask Matt to kind of give a little bit of a background, but I think there's 3 water lines in that area right now. Is that true, Matt?
Correct. There's 8-inch, 4-inch, I think probably 2 in there as well. Consolidated that into one, tie the Green Street PRV and set it up to maybe do Green Street at some point. And also things Clark and everything in there, as far as we can tell, is 80+ years old, so it's time.
So, in summary of this, as we're completing, we're getting close to completing Main Street, which we're getting towards the final weeks here of Main Street. We are, on schedule. We believe that we are under budget. $200,000, I think, is a conservative number. I think we may be a little bit better than that. We would bring to you all, once we get through our permitting side and our state approval side, the ability to move forward with Maple Street water and sewer, focusing on the sewer for the state monies, and then anything left over, we would pay for our bond monies that we have left over. Same with 221, that little section, I think that's about 700 feet between 220 or Main Street and Green Street. Completion of that water line into one, so consolidation of those 3 old lines into one. And then the Green Street project would take place thereafter. We've talked to the contractor, we've talked to McGill, surveying work has been done. Again, we're in the permitting state approval phase at this point to make sure that it's going to be approved by the state. But we're in belief that all that work can take place this calendar year and can be completed to allow for us to then get into the springtime when we're talking about paving and kind of putting in things back. So just kind of stay tuned. I wanted to put all that out there to the public and also to detail to you all kind of our thoughts on how we can utilize, again, all the state money that's been allotted to us, along with some of our bond money, to really go ahead and replace some of these lines that we were going to replace either way. This will allow us to do it all within the same kind of time frame, and then essentially put back the road, everything kind of paint back and put it back. So, yes, sir.
How extensive is Maple Street? What I mean is, does it run all the way back to Sunset, or is it just right before the turn?
It runs end to end. Let me just pull it GIS here, I think. Matt, you want to weigh in on Maple Street?
Yeah, it ties the main Sunset, it goes through.
Yeah, so let's just pull what we're talking about. Let's see here.
And the manhole, as far as the sewer, the first manhole, Maple, if you come off Main Street, that's the start of that line, so it doesn't tie in, the sewer doesn't tie in anything on Main Street, it'll be separate levy system.
Let me just pull up the sewer and the water that's on here.
Should just be one box for all.
Right? Should be. All right, so you can see here is Maple Street. Yep, so we're tying into this new manhole that was set on Sunset back in 2019. And then you're right in the roadway, got another manhole sitting here, another one here. So sewer is here, water is end to end. So sewer, I guess, comes off this right here behind the bank.
Correct.
Yep, so that is Clay, of course, so ever how old Clay is, at least 80 years old, I would say, would be a good guess. And then the water line is, oop, that's not the water line. So I can't click on the water line there. Matt, you know what the water line is? It's in there. Cast.
Yeah, 4-inch cast iron.
So are we looking at a repaving situation then?
Well, so yes, that was coming up in a couple slides.
Oh, sorry.
So the plan would be, as we get into the paving and crosswalks conversation, is to have mainly who the state has contracted with, to go ahead and just add that as a piece of the contract that the town would cover for Maple Street as well. 221 is a DOT road, so they would have that piece, but that would allow us to do Maple Street and have it all put back at the same time. So again, a lot of this thought was not only trying to utilize money that we've been allotted, which is important for us to be able to do, of course, not necessarily giving back what's out there, but at the same time, making sure that if we're tearing up roads, let's put them back, in the most efficient way that we can. Cost on 221 to Green Street, 600 feet, we'll say give or take, what do you think? $100,000 probably? Give or take on that. So again, thinking that we do have money that's sitting out there, that's in the bond money. So we believe that we could accomplish Maple Street, water and sewer, 221 to Green Street, and eventually Green Street with the monies that we have available between the state and the bond to get that knocked out. So Main Street is a DOT road, same as 221. So we met with the DOT about putting back Main Street. So originally, the DOT had proposed putting out to bid the repaving project within a 2-year time frame. So when they let a project, when they bid a project, they essentially give 2 years And so we were unknown which 2 years we would follow. So we met with DOT, and they have worked a scenario in which we will be within the current year that they're paving. We will not be able to complete it in this current year as in a calendar year because of the weather. So we're talking September and October finishing up Maple Street, water lines, et cetera. Obviously October is a month here that we try not to be in the roadway as much as we can. This is a complete repaving job. So this is milling the entire road surface. It's also ditch lines, side roads extensions that bear off of that. So DOT has said they need to allow for 30 to 45 days worth of work. So we believe that work would be best suited to do in March and April as the weather breaks. It's the least busy time that we have here in the town, especially for that type of work. That would also allow for us to get through these utility projects and have those complete as well. So they would be able to go back and put fresh surface paving back on everything. And so that's our tentative timeline right now. So if I were to put together a timeline on the board, we would, as we're working on Main Street, completing Main Street, eventually they would branch off and start working on Maple Street and 221 as well. Again, 221, I didn't mention earlier, is in the side. It's not in the roadway, it's in the side lane. So there'll be a little bit of disruption there, but not nearly like there has been on Main Street. And then eventually we would get into the springtime, and DOT, and maybe who's their contractor on this project, would come in and redo the road surface. Full milling job, full pavement job, ditch lines, etc. And we would ask them to quote us a price to do Maple Street while they were here. Somewhat insignificant amount, we would think. They're mobilized, they're already here. It would just be that 750 or 800 feet worth of asphalt that we would put back. But of course, the town would be covering that section of it since it would be on our road surface. Couple things that we need to think about. We don't have to decide today, but as they are putting back Main Street, DOT will not put back the crosswalks as we have them currently. So we stamped or had the stamping of the asphalt performed. DOT will put back asphalt with striping, with lines. As we've talked before, and we originally did price out when we looked at Main Street, putting in stamped concrete crosswalks. I've got some examples here, some pictures. So when we originally quoted Main Street, or bid Main Street, the quote included a $246,000 to redo all of the crosswalks on Main Street, side streets, etc. So your cross streets as well. About 700 linear feet, I think, is what was in the quote. And that was $246,000. So we have, and again, you have here kind of to the side of streets and sidewalk money, about $300,000 that we had tentatively put to the side to pay for this. So we've got money in the budget, so to speak, that we could utilize to do the crosswalks. We are asking Green's Construction just to re-up their bid to make sure this bid still fits. This was last year, about a year ago now. So there may be a little fluctuation in that price. Not material, not enough to rebid it, but I mean, insignificant, I would think, amount of difference. But we've talked about putting back stamped asphalt, which is what we have right now, which looks like this, right? So it does fade over time. You can color this. We have chosen not to in the past. So this is here at Main Street and Sunset. You can see there the differences of what it looks like. And then I've got some pictures around the area of what stamped concrete looks like. Ooh, that's kind of hard to see that. But you can see stamped concrete looks like brick or pavers, whatever you want to use. We can color it. They can color the concrete to match whatever color. They can stamp it to match whatever. Here is St. James down at the coast. This is all stamped, so you've got your concrete outline here with brick in the middle. Here's Reedsville. This was something that they did this past summer. This is all stamped concrete. They didn't put their symbol in the middle of it within that. So there's a lot of options with the stamped concrete, and then the longevity of it. Up here, things do tend to last less than they do off the mountain with salt and things of that nature. But a stamped concrete option is something we've discussed. We have not acted upon it, but it'd be great to have some feedback, maybe of what you're feeling on stamped concrete. Yes, sir, Pete.
Shane, what would be the time frame for making a decision moving forward with something like that?
I think over the next few months, So we would want Greens to work with Maybe in conjunction to have this work performed at the same time. Whether that means they do their job first, or they do their job second, or they do it in coordination with Maybe. We've not gotten that far to determine the timeline of it. The thing with stamped concrete that's different than stamped asphalt is that with stamped asphalt, it is pretty much ready to be driven on within a few hours. Stamped concrete is going to take a couple days. And so it would be something that they would do one lane at a time, maybe several sections. I don't know the details of it. But when we worked with Greens on the quote to begin with, their plan was to come in after the work was complete, and they would come in, quite honestly, in March or April again and try to use that time as being our least busy time. And they would close off one lane for a couple days at a time as they were performing this work, as the concrete was secured.
Did you say there's already 300,000 set aside? Do you have any idea of how many intersections we'll be doing?
It's every intersection that has a crosswalk now. So 700 linear feet, and we would double check exactly, but when we had it quoted out, we had every crosswalk on Main Street re-quoted as a part of this. Yep.
Do we have Chestnut crosswalk fixed?
Shane, be sure, let's check into the durability of concrete versus asphalt with the application, many applications of salt we make.
Oh, absolutely.
Asphalt's less susceptible to deterioration from salt than concrete, so we need to find that out too.
Certainly. Yeah, like I said, we're just now into kind of this beginning phase of sitting down if this is the direction we think we want to go. We can gather some information. We'll bring it to you, of course, at a council meeting and let you make that decision. But just wanted to throw some different ideas out here of some different examples of kind of what it looks like. You know, it can look.
Did this have any on Sunset School Crossing or any of those?
This did not, but that may be worth that. Absolutely. And while they're here working, it may not be a terrible idea to do the couple that are down there as well. And what I can do is gather some more information on the concrete, gather some examples. Greens is currently working in Boone right now, working in their downtown area, what that looks like. Some different examples of what's going on. And we can kind of come up with an idea, you know, something that, you can go as plain as we want to, or you can go with as extravagant there as putting put the town still in the middle of the road.
Shane, could you flip back to an example of stamped asphalt?
That's currently,
That's-
yeah.
Okay.
And this was done in 2019, so you can tell well, no, this was in 21. 19 was Sunset. This intersection was in 21 and early 22.
Okay.
So this is only about 3 years old. The durability of the asphalt, and again, I'm not quoting the durability of the concrete as in any particular time, other than concrete typically is much more durable. But this is the asphalt version here just within the last, probably 2 or 3 years or less worth of use. We redid this intersection in 21. Yeah. What that looks like. Questions? Chestnut sewer. So this is something that is fairly new, but again, a lot of these, I'm asking, Matt to weigh in on some of the history here, but I want to, pull up some words here and discuss the sewer and then maybe some background information. I'll pull up GIS as well, but Chestnut sewer is, again, we talked about clay being on Maple Street, existing old clay line on Chestnut. Again, this is at the top of Hospital Hill. We've got a section of old clay line that is failing, and several houses, private residencies are involved in this failing line. And so we are proposing replacement of that existing old clay line and kind of changing some of the direction. We're looking to set a new manhole in the road surface or on the outside of the road surface. This does connect currently to pressure, so let me just kind of pull up the GIS to give you a little bit of a view of kind of what we're talking. I'll leave on. All right, so here is Grandfather Avenue. Purple represents pressure. Green is gravity. This section of line here to here, is that right, Matt? Is our old clay line. You can see the line was put in before the houses were, but you can kind of see we got obviously some issues with where it's located, number one. But we do have this area here is failing. Fair to say, Matt?
Correct.
So as we're looking to potentially replace this, our thought process, along with McGill and Public Works, is to come back here to the middle of the road at Chestnut and capture this section of the line, which this is PVC. This is the newer section of the line, and set a new manhole here and run a new line down the roadway to connect to this manhole. And these homes would connect on the front side versus the back side. Correct, Matt?
Yes.
So by doing,
Would those homes have to put in the pressure system? Because they don't have them now, they're gravity flow now.
Correct. To be determined, it depends on what the final inverter of that line is in the street. There's a chance they would have to go to the pressure.
Who's gonna incur that cost? Would we, the town, since we're changing the line, or would they incur the cost?
it is typically on the homeowner.
Yeah.
And so the line is,
the reason they changed it.
yeah, the line is failing. So for us to replace this line is not real feasible, right? So we don't tend to like to put lines on private property now. And so our thought would be, again, to set the manhole here at the intersection, or at Chestnut, and rerun or put a new line in down Chestnut to connect to this manhole. You know, that would do a couple things. One, obviously, it would allow for this manhole to be potentially connected up Chestnut into this area where you see we have no sewer. And so it would allow for potential expansion of the sewer within this area. So you can see a number of homes here do not have sewer. So we don't necessarily know how many of those would be interested, but it would allow us to expand the sewer. And quite honestly, it would allow us to move this line off of the private property that it is currently right now. And we know that it's failing. We've had some issues with it in the last couple months that have come to light. So this is not a large project. From a town perspective, it's about $65,000. So it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. But again, it was kind of spurred on by the fact that we've had some issues in these properties in the last couple months, and we're trying to look for ways to rectify that. And again, looking for ways to potentially expand sewer as well from this area. As we're going to talk in a few moments, we've got some areas in town that we know that we need sewer, or we want to expand sewer. This is one of those areas, home-wise, number-wise, is not as many, but it is an area that we could potentially expand sewer by changing the current setup that's there. Matt, you want to add anything to it?
No, that's about it. I mean, obviously, anytime we can get it off the private property back to the street where we can maintain it a little easier, it's always better for us.
Yes, Pete.
Do you have any feedback from residents, in terms of their willingness to look at paying for, sewer hookups?
So the one home that is now that's found the issue, I guess we've talked to them and there's willingness there. The other two, would not necessarily have to make the change right now. We've talked about capping off the old line because it is gravity and allowing it to continue. If it were to fail, then their option would be to connect to the new sewer line. So, please stop me from speaking out of turn or something here. But the two homes, the one that is failing would have to make the change. The other two would have an option, if they were to fail, to tie into the new line. So it would not be a mandatory thing unless we wanted it to be a mandatory change.
So you're gonna keep part of the line active until such time it totally fails.
Correct. I mean, we looked at that option, just kind of let them, look when they were ready, so as long as that line was in service and working. It was really, getting in there to do any work on that line is next to impossible. So, once it kind of fails, it would be, just kind of cut a cap and then force it to come in front. Kind of be their only option at that point.
So wouldn't it pay to go ahead and put the taps in?
Yeah, absolutely. When that line would be ran, I'm sure they would go ahead and stub out as they came through. And then that way the taps would be there and that's done and taken care of. And then for the homeowner at that point, they wouldn't be paying a tap fee at that point. So that would be part of the project. They would just get their side hooked up and tied to what would be existing at that point.
I know one time on down Chestnut Circle, which we'll probably talk about in a minute, potential expansion of sewer line that we were looking about running a force main down through there, that a couple of people there at one time interested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Chestnut Circle, this would open up a certain area, right, for pressure to be fed into it. Not all of that area is going to feed this direction, but some of it could. And as you get around the backside, it can feed off the other side. Currently on that west side of Chestnut that you're kind of coming around, I guess that would be west, there is no opportunity right now at all. So this would open it up for a few homes additional. But yeah, so the line was put in, we believe, in the 1940s.
Best guess, yeah.
Houses were built in the 50s and 60s, just not maybe in the most ideal locations. So just going back in and replacing that in the current footprint is not really an option. We tend to try to get on private property for extensions.
Just out of curiosity, is the green line considered a private line or a public line?
Public.
Well,
Yeah, so it is everything coming off of, and I didn't describe that well, everything coming off of grandfather, pressure comes into that and goes behind these homes, down to this manhole and comes across. I say manhole, this is not a manhole, this is
basically a hole in the ground.
basically a hole in the ground.
I think it used to be a rock manhole and yeah, there's not much. That line, if there's hope to expand the sewer down Chestnut Circle and catch those houses, the line that's there now is undersized anyway. It's a old 6-inch terracotta that's, it would be an 8-inch put back in. But that line's not as it is right now.
So, our preliminary stage of this is we're getting state preliminary approval. Before we bring things to you all to spend the monies, we have to get the state, and I say state as in not state monies, but state from a certification standpoint, right? So we've got to get them to say even we need to do it first. And so that's where we are with this project. Like Maple Street, like 221, it's just making sure the state gives us kind of a thumbs up that what we're thinking with the water lines, sewer lines, all this stuff is what we think as well. And so, this line, is something if it was to never, if it would eventually fail, but right now, like I said, we're failing in this area. Is that right, Matt? Kind of this area is where it's failing.
Right.
We're not failing down in here. So this house would definitely have to tie in. We're not necessarily thinking these two would have to unless they wanted to. They could potentially just cap this line off and continue, this direction down with the gravity sewer that's there. But again, that's for conversation to be had. We have received a quote for this $64,000 change, so it's not a huge amount of money. It would be worth it, in our opinion, to go ahead and rectify this problem with putting that new manhole here and directing it down this direction and allow these houses to tie in. Again, this PVC, I think from here to here, is that right, Matt? This is PVC?
I believe so.
Yeah, so it's just this section here that we're looking to abandon, so to speak. If that makes sense. And so I did not put up here on the board, I don't think, but we do have a little bit of sewer money left in the bond, not as much as we have on the water side or anything, but we could utilize what's left to pay for this project as well. So again, not asking for money to come out of the water and sewer fund, not asking for fund balance to be used, but just really trying to use up the last remaining pieces of our bond. Tasha has worked for the last 2 weeks exhaustively on trying to reconcile the last 10 years of our bonds to make sure that we know exactly what we have in interest and our premiums. And so we know that we have more than what I've put up here. We're trying to identify exactly what that is. We've been fortunate enough to have some very favorable interest rates on both sides, whether it's loaning or lease or debt, or it's on our earning side. And so, so far what I've presented to you fits within all of the monies that's out there without taking into account some of the extra, so to speak, that we have out there. And And so we remember that a little bit as well. But so far, so good. What I presented to you is an ask, but it's not new money. It's money that's sitting out there. And along that line, a couple other projects, give you some updates on. Laurel Lane has been talked about for a number of years. Here's some pictures of what it looks like now. Got crumbling rocks here in the front. You got some crumbling rocks here on the side. We have received a quote for repair of Laurel Lane, repair, not replacement, of $25,000. That $25,000 would do several things. It would take out, essentially, and Corey's here to help me, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say from about right here over, or is it this whole section, Corey?
Yeah, it'd be that whole section there would be boulders. Just because for several reasons, vehicles, snow storage, all those things, and look, really. But that's part of what the price for repair would be, because I think we have some long-term thoughts of what we know it's gonna cost to redo the whole wall.
Yeah, complete rebuild, we received quotes, it's about $135,000. That's to take down the entire section, take everything down, put back a footer, build back the wall up, it's about $135,000. So, right now, we're looking to just repair it. Repair it would be bordering the sides, putting the rock back on the sides, bordering those, and then on each end of it, replacing what's felling there now with some larger boulders. I'm assuming, Corey, similar to this, it's kind of what we're looking like along the front and the back of this.
It'd be kind
Where
of,
vehicular traffic is.
Tyler would kind of place in boulders with a more of a, it would look like a wall, but with boulders, really. Maybe a little bit more height on that, but not much.
So we've been working recently, if you've, about the last day or two, you've seen folks out working, cleaning up Laurel Lane, getting things trimmed and putting eventually mulch and some stuff back. We've been working with the Bayview Homeowner Association. They've paid for the work that's being done right now, so the town's not paying for that. They've also shown interest in helping contribute towards the repair. I think that repair number of $25,000 will be a partnership between us and them. So we won't pay the full price of it. So that's something we've talked to them about in the last couple of weeks. And so we're going to present some options to them. We own it. I wanted to put that up there first. We own the property, but I think everybody that was around a number of years ago remembers the history there where we didn't own it for a long time, if ever. It was actually part of the old Mayview Manor. And so the town was gifted that property as a part of the Laurel Plaza, or the Mayview Plaza work that was done down there. So it was gifted to us with the understanding that we would obviously maintain it, keep it up. It's fallen on some hard times in the last couple of years. Trucks and cars continue to hit it. So we did look at two options, one being a replacement of the entire wall. With something very similar. That was a $135,000 option. We then went back and received quotes to do the repair work on the sides along with changing the ends to a more natural boulder look. And that's about $25,000. And so I'm looking to meet with the homeowner association over the next week and see what they're willing to contribute. And then I'll, of course, bring that to you all as well. But I think that will get us a few more years down the road until we figure out what we want to do. If we want to spend more money to replace the entire wall. Along that same line, kind of heading down the road, is our spillways. We've talked about this for a number of years. So we've looked at many different options for a number of years. At one point we talked about changing the spillway into a different location and taking the curb out. That's not a feasible or it's not an option. It's not a feasible option at all from a cost perspective and other reasons. Then allowing the spillway to continue where it is currently. This is kind of a grown up picture here, but this is the curve. So the road would be over here. This is our bridge. Water comes around this way and curves. You can see that we've got undermining going on underneath the old rock wall there. And then at the low section here, we've got pretty much failure that's taking place. You can see back here behind it what's happening. I don't know the exact age of this wall, but it goes back 100 years. It's an old wall. So we've looked at a couple different options. We've looked at a repair, which is about $20,000, and here's kind of what our thoughts are with the repair. And again, Corey's been instrumental in helping gather these quotes. is essentially removing this last 30-foot section of the wall and replacing those with large boulders. One, they would look very friendly and very common to what we have here, but they're not going to be moved. I mean, these would be very large stones that would be placed in there to replace this wall. As we've tried to get quotes from masons on this, this is not something that they're willing to touch necessarily. It's a very complicated old wall that's giving way. So our thought right now, jump in, Corey, is replacing this section with large stacked boulders to help hold back. This is Andy Cannon, right? This is our area. Along with on this upper end, coming in and placing boulders along the base of the wall here to help divert this water, and then allowing us to potentially backfill some of this as well. But coming back in and repairing the undermining side of this with any type of masonry debris is almost not feasible, is what we've been told. Nobody, we haven't found anyone that's willing to do it. And so our $20,000 repair option is to replace that lower section with stacked stone, large boulders, and then place along the curvature of the wall here, large natural boulders that help divert some of the water that's there that could allow us to maybe backfill at some point back behind that. Steve?
Corey, do you have the equipment and the manpower to do that kind of boulder work?
Yes, yeah, we're in touch with the person doing the bid, we're in touch with, and we'll be working together on. So, yeah, it's a big project, but it will go pretty quickly.
Where do you get the boulders?
This guy's got like a whole mountain of boulders.
So when we bid out projects like this, you know, we do struggle to get a lot of bids. So Tyler Symes, who has worked in the town for a number of years, he did the work at Sunset and Sunset and 321.
Right.
He's doing the work now on Laurel Lane. He has access to the boulders. And so he did our steps here, you know, heading down to Roy Hill. And so if you kind of think of his, you know, kind of his style and what it looks like, that's what we're looking to do here.
You want backfill with concrete?
Well, I don't know. So we've talked to McGill. He wouldn't, but we've talked to McGill about after the boulders are replaced, allowing it to come back in and kind of hosing, you know, using a pump system to put the concrete back in there to help stabilize it. But the wall is concerning. I mean, I'm not so sure that eventually we're not going to have that wall replaced all the way up with some type of boulder system or something in there.
Bad thing about it, we can remember when the water plant was there.
Yeah, that's right.
And what's the time frame on this?
So Laurel Lane is sooner. So our plan on Laurel Lane with the replacement is, I would think within the next month or so, give or take. The spillway would be around that same time afterwards, while the equipment's up here. So you will say over the next couple of months is the time frame for Laurel Lane and spillway. He'll have to procure the rock and get those located. You know, Danny Cannon, this area, you know, Corey, we're trying to be mindful of the time of the year, and because it's going to tear up that area quite extensively, and landscaping will have to come back and put that in there. I'll let Corey help dictate the right time of year to come in and make a mess, so to speak.
Will we need to put a railing along the top of this?
It would be advisable, yes.
There used to be a fence there, and it,
We talked about as we finished this, putting back some kind of fencing or something there, yeah. So we used to have a split rail fence that started giving way and eventually was taken down. But yes, that would be absolutely something we will put back. More than likely, some type of split rail fence or something.
Yeah, we'll come back. The area now, the way it is a split rail, there's 15 feet in between that, so people like to come over the split rail and get onto the area we're trying to keep them off of. So I think we can kind of work something new up that the fence is kind of there and stops people, and there's nowhere to go from there.
So back up on Laurel Lane, you've got the boulders on the ends, and then the walls you're thinking about repair.
Yes.
Let's see, seems to me there's an opportunity, well, I know we've got a lot of rock work But since we're in this area, could we do the bridge at the same time? I don't think, there's some rock work there that needs to be done.
Most certainly.
It's not a lot,
Yeah,
but while we've got
sure.
folks in the same neighborhood,
Certain, yeah,
I
we
would
can.
love to see that done at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the bridge itself, a lot of what's there is structurally sound. It's not
Yeah.
giving way or anything. It's just that veneer, it's the outside kind of area. There's some rock work within it. So, yeah, we can absolutely do that at the same time. It's not going out. Yeah, you know, if you go down the side and if you walk this, the overwhelming majority of this wall is fine. It's in pretty good shape. We just have areas primarily at your, you know, your driveways where our rock wall has been hit. You know, over here we've got it, right here we've got it. We've got a couple other areas. There's about a half a dozen areas that we're probably talking about really need repair. The rest is in pretty good shape. But this doesn't currently have a foundation or anything to it, so when we quoted it out to put it back, we would have to have a good portion of that $135,000 would be somebody coming in and putting a foundation around it to build the wall back up, because it currently doesn't have one. But again, we're talking, any guesses on this wall, 100 years old or more? So, quite a bit of age to it.
So, yeah, it may be now.
Yeah.
23.
Yeah, it's 100 years old now.
So Shane,
Yes,
if we go back to the picture of the spillway, I'm trying to envision this, the next picture. We're gonna tear part of it down
Yeah, this will be gone, so you
and
can
put
imagine
boulders up.
big stack boulders, big stack boulders, big stack boulders here, yeah.
And but then when you start talking about a railing, it made me think, okay, we're still gonna have that walkway area, correct?
Well, we would have, this would be backfilled in, and we could have railing up here, yeah. So this is our long area now, that's up here.
I was just trying to envision that.
Okay, yeah.
Since we're on rocks, rails, and walls, I'm gonna give the council an update on the railing going down to Royal Lake. Very good. Thank you.
So, our handrails to Boy Hill, that you approved in April or May, can't remember, with Clemens.
1898.
Yeah, with Clemens, have been, I guess they're being produced now, and we're thinking the second week or so of July.
Yeah, so they were down at 444, I think it was the last project, we're trying to get finished up. It's probably mid-July is about the time frame there.
But yeah, it's been procured and paid for and all that stuff, so we're just, you know, they'll be installing in the next few weeks.
One side. One side,
Yes. So we did go with the one side,
you can't go down the other side.
but two rails, right?
Both sides.
Oh, both sides, one rail.
Both sides,
Sorry.
one rail.
We're doing both sides.
Both sides, one rail.
rail. You gotta have both sides.
Okay, yep. So one handrail on top, not two rails, I'm sorry.
Okay, but you can add on both sides.
Yes.
I'll ask Kevin to give an update on wayfinding. He's been a part of that from the beginning stages of it.
No pictures.
I couldn't have pictures. I couldn't have pictures.
And,
You can draw them on the whiteboard.
Yeah. There's not much to share. I will give you an update. So the original schedule, shop drawings were going to be finalized this coming week for both the pedestrian signs and the vehicular signs. So things are still pretty much on schedule, as reported from Destination by Design. Sign production would be over the next 2 months, 2.5 months, starting, they have it on the 4th of July, but you know, that week, starting production. So, I think Case presented information to us a while back, the case with the Destination by Design. Said vehicular shop drawings are out of engineering, being revised. The engineers did request that they need larger tubes on the big signs, the vehicular signs, and a change order would be submitted to us for review. The pedestrian shop drawings are still in engineering. They are working through some of the samples for the wood grain, for some of the materials for the pedestrian signs, and the leaf design. If you recall, I had a stained glass leaf, and so they're trying to nail that down, but they're getting very close. But he says that everything is moving forward as expected and tracking pretty close to their original schedule. So the next 2 months, if everything follows suit, by mid-September, they should have all their sign production. Installation would begin also in mid-September, installing signs all the way through end of October, and then installing some of the areas where they had rock veneer on the pedestals or some of the pedestrian signs. That would continue through the middle of November. So by then, it should be complete. So, everything. And I think some have been recently installed by the county, right down here, as you're approaching. So that'll be a nice transition to our signs. Yes.
Kevin, is the project pretty much on budget?
Yes, we signed contracts. The only thing that I mentioned here was that the engineer recommended a bigger metal square post for some of the vehicular signs, and so they would submit a change order for the change in that cost.
Good. Any other questions? TDA funding.
Yes.
Yeah, TDA funding.
Yeah.
Make sure they're in
So we don't care what.
right, make sure they're in the right place, you know, heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I saw that. Somewhere out 194, I think. But they fixed it.
What's the state?
Yes, if you've seen the signs coming in town, these are almost identical, like in size and look to them, but the color's gonna be different. Yeah, color's a little different. It's a darker color, more wood grain type approach to it, which there was a committee that was put together back over a year ago, I guess, with the TDA. Some of you sat on and talked about color designs and looked to it, but very similar look as you're coming in from Bowden and vice versa.
The pedestrian signs will be what you notice is really important for us. The confidence markers and some of the little directional signs around town, that will set us apart from the signs that are similar to everything else in the county. If you get into the pedestrian local stuff, you'll see the difference.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Yes, we're looking to have that complete by, spring and this time next year, along with Main Street being repaved and relined and crosswalks, and so, I mean, we're just less than a year away from all this work being done and put back together, and I think you'll have pretty noticeable differences around here when all this looks like. It's that close to it. A lot of project, a lot of work that we put together, and staff and you all put into. We're just about to that finish line, put kind of everything back, and put a bow on it, it's being done. Questions on updates? Those are the updates of the current projects. I've got, what's coming up next with Memorial Park and some other stuff, USDA loan. Other questions on projects you're entertaining that I'm missing? Any questions on?
Take a quick break. 7.5.
Sounds good. just a recap of the current projects. And so now we're getting into some of the winter retreat that we talked about, some of the items, some of the priorities, along with upcoming projects. So they're not in any particular order, so to speak, but I wanted to kind of go from a current project to a future project, which has been USDA. So we've talked about the USDA loan for several years. And of course, you know, back last month at the council meeting, we approved the ability to execute the loan documents and the offer letter. We have now finalized that just today. Hillary and myself completed and sent to the USDA the final document. So 3.5% interest over 40 years. The loan is $4.565 million. So it came in exactly where we thought it was going to, which is fantastic. So again, just to recap, this is not only the replacement of the Mayview sewer lift station and force main work that's down there, but it's also significant replacement and repair work at the water plant and the wastewater plant. And so you can see everything from high service pumps, water layers, finished water pumps, valves, piping, wastewater plant, the equipment, the bar screen, effluent pump, aeration equipment, structural leak repairs that need to be taking place. And then SCADA for both places. SCADA, again, is our technology system that not only allows us to operate and monitor remotely, but allows us for alerts, et cetera, that we've not had in the past. So anybody, and I didn't put the pictures up here, I've always shown the green panels of our operating system at the water plant, the wastewater plant. It's removing all that, changing it over a computerized digital system that does allow us to monitor and operate remotely. Neither one of our plants here run 24/7, so I always like to keep that, or put that out to the public. We do not have someone at both plants 24/7. That is not needed. We fortunately have a water plant, wastewater plant that are very efficient, so those are not ran 7 days a week, not ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this does allow for us to operate those and monitor those remotely. So USDA loan is getting close to being a reality, is what I would say. So we've accepted the terms. We now are under contract, so to speak, with the USDA. Our next steps are to design and bid the actual work. So until we got the USDA loan, we never finished the complete design work of the work to be done. So that is what takes place now. It now falls within this $4.5 million. And so we're looking to bid around this time next year, this project. It then gets a little bit more complicated because essentially we have a construction loan from the date in which we bid it and accept it to the date in which we complete the construction. And so we'll have interim financing that will wrap the interest portion, like if you had a construction loan, you pay interest only. That all gets wrapped up into this $4.5 million number as well, and eventually becomes part of the USDA loan that will more than likely be sometime in 2027. And so you're going to continue to hear about USDA for at least the next probably 3 to 4 years as we get this project completed. All that being said, on the financial side, everything wraps up into this 4.5. They have accounted for the design work. They've accounted for the bid and the engineering work. They've accounted for the interest that'll be part of the interim financing. So we're not going to be asking for any additional monies between now and the time the loan takes effect in probably 2027. And so that's the great news. All of this is being held at 3.5%. If rates do go down, we can refinance. So that is an option as well. USDA has been historically low compared to any other market that's out there. We have a current USDA loan right now, and it's a small loan that I think is at 1.5% or 1.25%. So 3.5% is as high as we'll ever go. We are optimistic over the next few years we potentially could refinance it to lower. But much needed work at the water plant, wastewater plant, and our Mayview lift station replacement. So as of today, the documents have been executed, and USDA has now given us the go-ahead to start the design work and getting ready for bids. Permitting on Mayview will be about 6 months along because of the location of it. Especially on USDA.
Remind me, is the design in the document?
Yes. So everything is in this dollar amount now. So everything going forward has been included. Including some money that we've been able to recapture, will recapture that we've spent already, that goes into that. So that's an all-inclusive number. That's got everything in it, so, which is good. All right, so wanted to give a recap on USDA before we got into probably a more lengthy discussion on Memorial Park. Any other questions on USDA? All right, Memorial Park, Doug Chapman was not able to be here today. Doug's dealing with a health issue, but some of these slides I did steal from Doug that he presented to you in January. And so, wanted to kind of recap. This is our site plan of the proposed park project phase 2 that was bid out this past year. And so kind of starting down here with Main Street and of course Town Hall up in this area. We did have a addition to the playground. We did have a proposed sidewalk change here on this back side with resurfacing or new tennis courts along with the retaining wall and walkway. Relocation of the dumpster along with additional sidewalk, new pickleball courts, proposed wall and retaining wall in this area. We're relocating our Gaga Hall with a wall and a seat and some additions to the picnic or the area here around the hut along with the volleyball court. So a number of things here that were originally proposed. And so recap on the cost was that back, this again was put out in January, a couple different options, or a few different options. Was option 1 was to construct the entire project with the alternates. And so I'll pull up the alternates in a few minutes, which is about $2.1 million. And then we talked about option number 2 was kind of value engineering approach, which was somewhere between 1.6 and 1.8, which essentially was taking out the pickleball courts, the separate pickleball courts. And again, all that were here in January, speak up if I say something incorrectly. Option 3 was to then selectively, potentially selectively complete the required part of the work to get the $500,000 and to look at maybe negotiating with our bidder. So if you recall, we did have one bid. Is that correct? And only one bid. Since that time, McGill has worked with the bidder to try to gather some component or unit pricing of the original bid. That has been somewhat unsuccessful. And so what we are now looking at is several different options that I think that we could talk about. We could continue on with getting some type of financing. So whether it is option 1 or option 2 here, or honestly option 3, we have no more monies left from the bond towards the park. So we have expended the bond money with the bathroom completion. So we have a $500,000 parking grant that's sitting out there without any type of financing to go along with it. So if we were to go forward with option 1 or 2, or some type of option 3, at this point, we're looking at some type of probably financing, some type of installment loan to go with that, which is kind of where we are between option 1 and option 2. Option 3 would be to re-advertise with a much more solid approach, starting with exactly what is needed to get part of the grant. So I talked with Doug Chapman at McGill, and they would need a few weeks to go back and redesign, so to speak, for bid, the exact work that needs to be put into it for the part of the grant. Then rebid it with the approach of utilizing unit pricing. So as the bids were to come in, we would have some type of a segmented unit price approach towards it. And we could determine that based on whatever discussion we want. But we want to put it in so it's segmented off into tennis court, walkway, pickleball courts, that type of approach to it, or do we want it just strictly unit pricing with the bulk side as an option within that? But we've not been successful necessarily in getting the breakdown of the current bid that is out there the way that we would hope to get to be able to give you data to say, if you just want to do the tennis courts in the wall, for instance, here's the cost. We don't have that type of data right now. And I don't think that we will without going a different approach towards the bid and asking for that to be a part of it. And again, Doug and I talked last week. He's regretting he couldn't be here today, but wanted to share that his approach right now is to look towards more of that segmented approach and maybe rebid it to see if we're going to be successful in getting some type of breakdown. We did, and I want to point that out, throw out here deferring the part of the grant. We have applied for an extension already We're expecting to hear back in the next month or so on that extension. But that would extend the project, part of it, until February of 26. So that still gives us, another, 20 months or so from today. The project, start to finish, is about 7 to 9 months. So we're not up against the wall, but we will be soon. We need to make some decisions on what this looks like. I'll kind of pause there, thoughts and
So
questions.
essentially, we rebid it with the minimum to be what it would take to receive the Part F funding, okay?
Yes.
Then we have an attachment or options in the bid in addition to bid this item, and this item. That would be in addition to the minimum to reach Part F, correct? So we do that.
Yeah, so we would recommend, and I won't obviously you all weigh in with, if we're going to rebid it, we would rebid it with the exact minimums of obtaining the Part F grant, with stipulations in the bid to bid with unit pricing. So we would have some ability to then determine what the breakdown of the bid entailed. So right now, the way that it was originally bid was a very open, vague approach to allow the bidder to submit bids based on what we put in there. So we have a number. We don't know what necessarily makes up that number. That's what we've attempted to get. We've not been able to successfully get that. So we could then look and say, what would look like a Part F only application? Or if you go back to 2014, when we sold the bonds, there was a couple pieces in there that we did sell, so to speak. The tennis courts, the walkway, the retaining wall, those pieces were the pieces that we did sell as part of the bond. So I would say at a minimum, we need to discuss or have some ability to know what that's going to cost as well as it breaks down.
Those pieces I don't believe were required for the Part F.
Okay. Well, the tennis court would be, but the retaining wall and the walkway does play some points into it because of the ADA, but the retaining wall is not a part of that. But we did, those three pieces were a part of the original 14, was the retaining wall, ADA walkway, and tennis courts were how we kind of worded the bond in 2014.
But even by re-advertising it, we're still going to come up with funding for the matching 500,000.
Correct. And we do have some options, I think, coming up, not to that extent. We probably have some funds that are going to be available later in the fall as we kind of true up the year. The ABC store and others true up the year. We're talking more in the $100,000 or $200,000 range, not in the $1 or $2 million range that's out there.
The new tennis courts, were they going to be tennis and pickleball combined?
So, yes and no, I'm going to say that. So here's the reality of it, was if you look
Going back
here,
and forth.
yeah, the way this is designed is obviously with pickleball courts here, correct? These still remain the hybrid, and these still remain tennis courts. However, if you read the way the Part F approval was, it is a hybrid approach towards utilizing these. So we would need to clarify that, and that's part of this, is clarifying with Part F exactly what the wording entailed and whether or not we need to make it hybrid, or if it's going to cost us by not having it. But the wording of it technically was to have this as being a hybrid approach to tennis and pickleball.
We'll need another full-time officer to man that, by the way, if we have a hybrid approach between tennis and pickleball.
But if it were to be run sideways, we haven't designed anything with that yet. So if we were to go back out, one of the things that we would need to clarify immediately from Part F is exactly what their wording entailed. So if we needed to change this to include that, then we would need to change that and make that part of that. But we haven't gone that route yet because we want to make sure that we're all on the same page before we're heading. But the wording is pretty clear, is that it is the utilization of the current tennis courts to provide both tennis and pickleball recreation is how it's worded. So we need to clarify that for part of.
So the basketball courts where pickleball is being played now, that needs to be resurfaced.
And it was included.
It was
Yeah,
included.
right here, we were resurfacing it, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was included.
Is it safe to say the activities that were in the bond, well, the retaining wall, tennis, none of that counts toward Part F? Part F is new, it's not repairs too.
Right.
So we've got a bit of a disconnect there. What we sold for the bonds, it's not necessarily helps us with Part F.
Outside of the tennis courts, you know, how that's worded, but this back section here is not. No, that is structural. Part of it doesn't care if we have a retaining wall there or not. We can take that retaining wall out and slope this down and get rid of these parking places, and it wouldn't make a difference.
In other words, resurfacing the tennis courts, grouping in pickleball as alternate on the tennis courts, we're able to use that in Part F. Right.
Probably got you, I can't remember, but it probably got you a point.
Yeah.
I think it was a point or something.
Yeah,
It was on the high scoring point.
but if you're already doing new pickleball, more pickleball, that give you more points.
But I think it's new, I think is, in Part F is, it's gotta be something new, different,
Right. That's why we put cornhole.
or.
It was a cheap point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, the reusing of this current tennis court area with pickleball did get us something. And so what we're essentially going to have to do is sit down with our part of the rep as if we're going to rebid this and make sure we have exactly what needs to be in there as an option. Or, I mean, we can still go back and, I mean, the options are, as stated, we do have one bid that's out there. Right, and that one bid for everything that's on this picture is about 1.2, $1 million. Of which half a million of that's part of it, so we're 1/6 short. It's a big number. Getting rid of the pickleball courts, extra pickleball courts is going to put us somewhere, and a couple other small components puts us down around 1/6 or 1/8. But again, now we're $1 million, $1.2 million or so short. But we don't have that true breakdown to give you an understanding. If you want to go beyond that into an option 3 or other discussion points.
So I'm just thinking about, all right, other companies that do pickleball courts, let's just say as an example. And we can go to those companies and ask for bids, right? What's to prevent us from taking some select pieces and going through, other companies that do these things to reduce the cost?
From a part of standpoint, they're going to want it to be,
I
so part is separate.
Right,
If we were to do just part of, and we do, this area, and this area, and this area, but we want to come back and do separate pickleball courts.
yeah,
We absolutely can, and they don't have to be here, right, they can be somewhere else necessarily, if that's what you're saying.
yes, I am asking that. So Part F is here. And if we do everything in Part F and nothing else, that's how much less than 2 point whatever?
That's what we don't know.
Okay,
We think we have a ballpark with the one bidder, but we don't have that number exactly.
I think it needs to be rebid.
But so part of it is going to want their pieces, if they have 10 pieces they want, those 10
yes,
with the contractor under one bid.
under one bid,
Going
one
through the process.
contract.
Anything beyond that, if we were to eliminate these pickleball courts and we eliminate, whatever else that we can eliminate, we can always go back and add it separately or do it, à la carte, or put it be somewhere else. Yes, absolutely, that's what.
I'm a proponent of that, because the total cost of everything is exorbitant.
And we have no guarantees of what our bids are going to look like. We have no guarantees of how many bidders we'll have. But at this point, other than the one bid, that is where we are. That is kind of our only option.
I think it needs to be rebid, see if we can get some additional bidders.
It's, I'm talking to you about, it's amazing how many towns that I've talked with who have been deferring a lot of projects because of construction costs. It's outrageous.
When will we know about our extension? Do you know when we're running?
So, Jennifer, the last email or the phone conversation with Pardiff, did they give us any timeline of when we thought we would hear from them? They are just finishing up the new round. They want to start on the
They
extensions.
were in the middle of reviewing current Pardiff applications when I sent in the extension. And he said, so it may be a little bit before we hear back because they were headed into the middle of the current Pardiff.
We'll check and see. I would think we
So
would.
I can find out,
From all indications, I will say, we do not believe there's any reason why we would not be granted. It's a pretty, not a rubber stamp, but it's pretty close, especially from our conversations with McGill and their part of the consultant. To Doug's point, everybody's asking for extensions either because of deferring the cost or the construction cost, or the fact they just don't have contractors that can get on the work quickly. So it did seem like from our conversation with McGill, this was kind of a guarantee.
We go back to the option. Well, if our back isn't up against the wall time-wise, I don't think any of us want to lose a happening of our effort.
No, if we give it back, if it's gonna compromise getting future ones.
Yeah, but I, you know, like Kat said, I just can't digest 2.1 million. Or something we thought was going to be closer to 1.2, so, I think that, you know, we need to rebid it. Get a unit price if we can. Like,
I agree with that. We all do.
Everybody's in agreement. We'll have McGill with staff. So the plan, once we got here today, is we'll sit down with McGill, Park and Rec staff, and go through with part of exactly what needs to be put in the new bid document that's out there. And we will start with that, but we will require as part of the bid document some type of unit pricing of some sort. So we then can, if it comes back again higher than what we feel like we can, we still can't pick out certain pieces. At that point, we would lose the $500,000, but we still may want to continue on, or we may not want to do anything. But right now, we don't have the ability to tell you what a retaining wall is going to cost, or what a walkway is going to cost, or what a pickleball court is going to cost necessarily. We don't have that type of breakdown.
I'm sure we will without more advanced drawing.
Which is exactly what McGill will do. So Doug, we want to say that. If we okay it, we'll sit down with them. We will change the drawings and the design he said. So he needed 2 to 3 weeks to do that, to get that back out. So he's going to change that to allow for it to be bid.
Those numbers don't include the restroom.
They don't. The restroom's only been most recently completed, right? So the last payout was done, so the restroom's paid for, so they're all paid for, so we're good on those. But we did utilize our bond money that we had. We did utilize our bond money along with ABC and DEA money to pay for those. And I've shared with you all, the market is obviously different here, but I've been a part of several projects recently, much larger size than this for less money. So I do think we need some competitive bidding. It's a very high price for what we're asking. Okay, everybody in agreement then with moving forward with rebidding it? Okay, so we'll look to do that over the next couple of months, get it out there and see what that looks like and come back with some options hopefully. And hopefully we can still capture that part of the grant.
Thanks for breaking it down.
Okay, so parking, relatively simple update here, but open for discussion. So about 2 months ago, I guess, as I was kind of coming back home, there was discussion about doing a potential behavioral study of our parking and what that looks like. So back at the retreat, you all kind of gave the indication, I believe, and I say kind of, I believe the indication was given to move towards paid parking later this fall, implementation into next year. Is that fair? I think that was kind of the guidance. However, there's data and understanding that's out there, not understanding that's out there that I think that could be helpful to have. So tomorrow morning, Meredith McLaurin, Little is her last name, but she's a part of the McLaurin family that has about 40 plus years of parking on their resume, parking experience on their resume. Steve McLaurin, her father, who she's worked under, I think, for about 12 or 15 years, was instrumental in helping the town of Boone, Raleigh, Atlanta, Charlotte, Asheville with parking. Meredith now is on her own, so to speak, and working as a consultant, and provides essentially a behavioral type analysis of the parking. So what she proposed in discussions with the TDA as well, kind of to piggyback the Roger Brooks study that was done. Roger kind of ended his study with, you need parking, 600 spaces, you don't have a tourist problem, you have a parking problem. Her coming in on the backside of that ideally would have been what took place. We didn't do that, but what she's going to propose to have is over several months, the next few months, collection of data to be able to give to us as a part of the package that says your parking on Main Street is comprised of these types of people, right? So 60% of your parking on Main Street Monday through Friday is restaurants and workers. And so 40% is this amount, that type of thing. Data that we don't currently have is what she's going to be able to provide to us. And so why that's important, and again, I'll allow her to speak to this once she gets here and kind of gets up and running, being able to then hopefully marriage up the problems we have with solutions. And so as we talk about paid parking, this is not stopping our momentum towards that, if that's where we're heading, but it does give us some ability that if our 100 spaces on Main Street, if 60 of them are comprised mostly of workers, then how do we find or help them find spaces to park? And so she's not necessarily looking to partner with the town on doing that, but actually having individuals, hopefully, or businesses partner with other businesses or entities. Similar to what you've seen in Boone or what you see when you go to places is that you have private lots, you have churches, you have things that are selling permits to other businesses that don't have parking. And so if you have a business that has plenty of parking, maybe you want to sell some of that parking to businesses that don't have it. That's not necessarily a town function, that is business to business is how it is in most places. The town permitting process is what we have it on our public lots, our parking decks or our lots. And so that's a big piece of one, figuring out how many spaces do we think we need to find, or does someone need to find solutions for? And then how can we help, or how can she help find those solutions? And the enforcement piece is where she's really going to hone in on, is that if we're enforcing this accurately based on our 3 hours, is that enough? Should it be more than 3 hours? Is it too much? That's another component of this. She is not necessarily focused on getting us to pay parking. If we get there, and she's fine with that, but she's really wanting to give us the data and the analysis of what we have currently, options that are out there to help get rid of some of these enforcement problems and issues that we have, to then hopefully free up parking for what it's supposed to be used for, which is shopping and dining and short-term type use that's out there. So TDA has been instrumental in this. Kat is who brought that to them initially in this conversation, and hopefully gathering some data. So I don't think that it's putting us behind much. It may slow us down just a tad bit as we get this data. All of this will come to you all. She also plays a pivotal role in helping us as somewhat of a buffer, providing alternative options as well. If we are to build additional parking, what does she recommend from her expertise and what that looks like? Proximity to town, walking distance, etc. Questions?
I think it's really a great step because it'll help in talking to the public and having them understand exactly what we're faced with, what the solutions are, and measuring out the data that she's gonna provide will be critical. So it's up to us, once we get the data, to make sure that the public has access to it.
You know, and her position is as a consultant, so it's not, I've had this conversation or this question asked, you know, is this leading into, you know, the McLaurins doing the paid parking like they did in Boone years ago with the, you know, the coin machines? The answer is no, they're not into that work. This is consultant. So if we get into paid parking, is on us. That is not necessarily on them. They will help us bridge that gap, is essentially what we're doing here. From where we are now to where we could get to, is helping us bridge that gap with the data and the information. But we know that we have problem folks, right, that utilize our parking for the wrong reasons. We have workers, we have restaurant folks, we know that, but we don't necessarily know how much of that we have. We don't know how much they're turning over. We don't know who our biggest culprits are. But I think getting that data is going to be valuable to know, so we can help with the enforcement piece of it. And that's a big part of this. How much of it, we don't know. You know, another piece that I would bring up, Nathan's in here, is if we do get to a full parking plan with enforcement and paid parking, her recommendation is going to be that we have a parking department, not a police department that's overseeing that. It needs to be separate. If we're getting into parking, it needs to be parking folks that are charged with parking and the enforcement of it and the expertise of it. So that's something that's going to be coming as well, if we are to get to that point with some of those recommendations. But again, I put up here, you know, the resume is extensive, number of years and all things parking, and I think the data that she will provide is going to be very valuable with what we're looking at. It's going to be during our busiest time. She's not going to necessarily be here during the winter months unless we ask her to come back in the winter months. I think the data, some of our worst case scenarios are what we're going to find out, you know, over the next few months and as we're dealing with July, August, and September.
A lot of this would have been very helpful when we did the Brooks study.
Yeah, ideally, the Brooks study would have kind of started to come to an end, and we'd had somebody like this come in and say, here's what you do have with the parking issue that you have in town. So, we all remember the town hall that we had, and we had a lot of questions thrown out there, and some of these were these questions. I mean, how many parking spaces do you really need? How many parking spaces are restaurants or businesses, you know, employees taking? We don't have that data. I mean, we can guess, but we don't have that data. Questions here? All right, moving along. So, Kevin's coming back up to give us an update on the downtown subcommittee.
Our downtown subcommittee has been working over the past couple of months to look at all of our standards for downtown, building heights, setbacks, building materials, design, what the town center currently is and how it's laid out, and should we expand that area, take it down. So lately, the discussion has been about expanding town center, not call it town center. We've kind of gotten out of that, but down Sunset and identifying the first block down to Maple Street. The first block down to Maple Street as being similar to how it's, how the east side of Main Street is developed, and then look going down. So this purple is town center, and then the pink is central business. There's nothing different about.
Got shades of pink, different shades of pink.
Here it is. The purple is town center, and this, all the pink is central business. And these standards apply to those two districts. Currently, there's no difference between, you have a shade, don't you? There's no difference between town center and central business as far as use categories, setbacks, or anything. We set up a town center a few years ago to do that, to distinguish between the rest of central business. And looking at East Main Street, east side versus west side. So the subcommittee has been working on that. And it's a big job to do it all at once. So the thought is we're going to bring some things to you and then the planning board for a recommendation in bits and pieces. That makes sense that we can, okay, let's accomplish this part first, come back and address another item. And so the first thing we're working on is setbacks and building heights, and possibly some landscaping as it relates to that. And even materials on Main Street or within town center, that if you're gonna use rock, it's gotta be rock. That's what we're known for. So let's make it, at least for the town center, to be real rock if you're gonna use it. And then the next part, we'd come back and look at expanding town center down Sunset, and maybe it's a different district, Sunset North or East or West. We'll come up with something that will show that Sunset is an area that we think there's going to be some growth, and we want to protect it, but we also want to invite business and activity, and that our design standards reflect that a little bit more special, just like town center, differently from the rest of central business. So that's the next thing we will bring to you. Third thing would be design standards. So after we work through this first two, we'll look at design standards a little more specifically so that we get the product that we want when a building is built. And then finally, and maybe it can be coupled with the third phase there is use limitations. If we want to look at some areas that we don't really want that use that's listed in our code to be downtown. And so we'll look at that too. So that's kind of where we are with it. I will tell you, so far we're looking at the east side of Main Street to have a 5-foot setback. The west side of Main Street to have a 25-foot setback. It may not be 25, it might be 20, but we've gone as far as putting that in a draft ordinance. Building heights. We discussed that at length because we went out and walked. The last time we met, we walked down Main Street and walked down Sunset and looking at a 30-foot building height on the east side of Main Street. But if you go back 5 feet and observe a 5-foot setback, we let you go 35. So that a 5-foot setback helps us have increased space for our sidewalks so that the benches to be in front of the building, not out in the sidewalk, so it opens up our sidewalk that way. And then on the west side of Main Street, a 35-foot building height, because the last couple of buildings that we've improved on that side have been 35. So those are things that we're working on, and it's slow, but it is progress. We're moving ahead. I think Steve wants us to move faster than we are. We're moving. But it does take time. John Winkler's been asked to serve on our committee. He wants to move faster than anybody. I said, it'll be okay. We'll move ahead. But that's an update. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, I do like, Kevin, that you divided it up now into segments. Let's concentrate, get one done, and then move on instead of, because it could take forever to rate move.
I think if we show some progress in some area, it will help keep the momentum
Yeah.
instead of trying to bypass the whole thing at one time.
It's like eating a whole jar of peanut butter in one sitting. Sticky.
You wouldn't feel good after either.
Any more questions on this, on the downtown subcommittee? So more to come, more to come. Kind of transitioning into what I put here, kind of planning ahead. So some of these things, again, we talked about at the winter retreat. And if I missed anything on the winter retreat, let's throw it start out there and let's talk about it. So I tried to go back and capture what I thought was kind of the top list of things that was discussed, that we've not acted upon or what's coming up. So, you know, I put here 2025 retreat and bonds question mark. So a lot of what we're gonna talk about next are all things that we need some direction on, so to speak, that if we're all in agreement, we have between now and essentially the 25 retreat, January, to be able to get some really good work done, mainly on cost estimates and timing and et cetera. Because if we are heading towards a bond later in 25, November of 25, it really starts now, and it starts relatively soon with putting together some of those thoughts, so we can then utilize that data at the retreat in January, February to prioritize what we're talking about. So that's kind of what we're putting here is, you know, for us to be able to prepare a full depth capital improvement plan, what are we talking about? It's going to be more than we can afford. We know that, right? So we know when we put it out there, there's going to be a lot of stuff. But there's a lot of pieces to that we will need to start, again, relatively soon on gathering some of that data, because some of this takes several months. And, you know, my thought, and I want to share, you know, you share yours, is that if this is how we're heading, our retreat in January, February would be a good time to prioritize these list of things that we may want to head towards bond. You know, putting, you know, our financial advisors on alert, which we've done. Tasha and I have met with them and said, hey, start thinking now on putting together some information for us on our current debt portfolio, our debt capacity, and then what that would look like with future revenues. Essentially getting to, if we're in agreement next February, if this is the direction we're heading and we want to issue this much in the way of bonds, what does that look like for tax revenue? What does that look like for pennies, that type of thing? So this all plays a factor into the ultimate long-term goal, which is, you know, potentially selling bonds on the market and to the voters that are out there. So, you know, water and sewer needs are something that we've talked about and we'll talk about forever. We have made tremendous progress since 2014. I went back and looked at the original data that was put out there. We've accomplished beyond what we said we were. You know, Main Street was a pie in the sky dream because of the cost of it. It wasn't included in the bond, but Sunset was. You know, some of these others that we're going to complete in the next couple months, like Green Street and Maple Street, pretty much puts a conclusion to all the water that was sold back in 2014. But we've been able to accomplish a lot, you know, other than that, Pine Street, Main Street. I mean, there's been a lot of other projects, the PRVs, because of the state money that came in, things that we didn't include. So today versus where we were 10 years ago is night and day on the water and the sewer side. You know, our water needs that are out there, and I can let Matt kind of chime in on some of his thoughts, but it's smaller scale repairs or smaller scale replacements. But you want to weigh in a little bit on some thoughts of what's out there, and then I'll kind of talk about next steps.
Yeah, I mean, now the main's done, or gearing being done, that was our thorn in the side forever. That was, you know, we had problems, that's what it was. I talked to Shane about outside of that, I don't have a smoking gun. You know, it's kind of a hodgepodge, hit this wherever it's at. I mean, there's a ton of old lines still in service that can be replaced, but where you start, you kind of just throw a dart at the map and go, I guess. You know, Green Street, that same 4-inch line up to 1 inside, so that's an older section of the system. A lot of them maybe still pretty old, so there's areas that definitely, you know, we can look at. There's, you know, thankfully not just a really awful section we need to concentrate on, so we're kind of free to look at where we want to go from here.
I think it's really great what Public Works has done, and I love their scheduling. They get all their normal duties done during normal hours, and we have a break after 5 o'clock.
On a Friday evening.
On a Friday evening, yeah.
Always on a holiday.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. No, and, you know, the town, you know, it's hard to compare, right? But the town of Blowing Rock in the last 10 years has made this the number one priority. That's why I started with it. Water and sewer has been the number one priority of the town. And I would say that we are head and shoulders above any other town of our size in the work that has been done in the last 10 years, especially on our main lines. We can't sit down right now and give many main lines that are questionable. They are either all replaced or have been somewhat replaced in the last little bit on the main lines. And I think that's a fair statement. So now we're talking, you know, our auxiliary lines, our 2 inches, our galvanized, that type of thing is kind of where we're heading with some of this stuff. But our main lines, for the most part, are in pretty good shape, at least from what we know that we've dug into, you know, with our constant issues. You know, we talked about Main Street. We had 25 breaks in about an 8-year span. I mean, it was 5 a year, 3 or 4 a year, it seemed like. We had 3 or 4 in one night or two there for a while when it got real cold last December. So next step for us is to determine, along with what we know, you know, with McGill, and what Public Works knows at some of our problem areas, of what's our water line replacement need to look like. We need to continue to put money towards it. But our big projects aren't nearly where they were. We've been able to accomplish that. It's been a great thing that I don't think all towns can say compared to where we are. Sewer expansion, we talked about earlier. I've got a slide to pull up here in a few moments. It's something we have talked about, but we've never really acted upon, not to the extent that we may want to. So our sewer map, and it's kind of hard to see, but this was something McGill showed you back in January. Our biggest areas, that's what's highlighted here. This is, I guess, Laurel Park, is that right, Matt? Yeah. And this is maybe, this is our country club area, and you've got some other outlying areas here, but, you know, we are moving forward with the Mayview lift station. That's going to be a big piece to Mayview and what that looks like. You know, and that's down in this area, I guess, and that potentially would allow for us to look at expanding sewer there. Again, our next steps on all of what I'm talking about now would be to get some numbers. What would Mayview look like? What would Laurel Park look like? What would Country Club look like? You know, what would these other outlying areas look like? We're not going to be able to accomplish everything.
Mayview, percent-wise, does not have sewer. 50%?
I don't know that it'd be quite that high, but it's a fair amount.
Yeah. It's a good chunk. Laurel Park are our 2 biggest concentrations of sewer. Mayview is different because of the topography. Laurel Park is going to be difficult, not impossible, but there's going to have to be a pretty significant lift station placed somewhere there to get that sewer.
Could it not be a package system, but down below?
I don't know.
I don't know if you'd ever get that permitted or.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you have to cross China Creek to come across from backside of Mayview coming over to get to Laurel Park to be.
And then you end up going into the national parks.
Right.
So what we would like to do is, over the next, say, 6 months, be able to gather some numbers to be able to present to you all. Again, I don't have a cost number on this, but we're not going to accomplish all this at one time, right? We're going to have to pick and choose where we think is best use of our monies. You know, and the way that we looked at the bond last time, similar to this time, is how much do we want to put towards water? How much we want to put towards sewer? How much we want to put towards parks? How much we want to put towards, you know, other areas, streets, you know, sidewalks, that type of thing. So, water last time was more than sewer, 2 to 1. We put more towards water than sewer. The majority of our bond last time was doing transportation, streets and sidewalks, and our paving majority were a good chunk of that went. And then we had some with our park and rec as well. So, sewer expansion, though, is something I've heard from all of you. I believe that you want to make that a focus. And so we need to get some numbers of what this may look like to be able to provide you with some good data based on areas. But our thought right now is kind of segmenting you off into these, you know, different multiple areas around town and what that looks like.
Do we, have any reports of septic failures? Or having to utilize repair areas? If they have repair areas?
We're dealing with one right now that it hasn't failed. It's on the verge, and he has no repair area, so he's looking at hooking to sewer.
He has an option.
Yeah. I think he bought the house with a thought that he wasn't a sewer, and then found out partway he was not, so he's kind of backtracking now, but, none off the top of my head where septic's failed, and they do not have a fair area or any other options.
And our cost numbers here may simply outweigh the benefits. I mean, that's something we'll have to determine what that looks like. You know, if we're talking a $2 million lift station, that may not be something feasible that we want to do, what that looks like. So,
Well, you know, it's funny, you could be in a seasonal area that systems don't get, historically have not gotten utilized,
Right.
you know, 24/7. But as we become a more year-round
Right.
community, that potential to increase, given the age of some of these systems.
And I think that's what he meant. It was a second home forever, and it literally was I think his drain line was 40 feet, and then if you would grab it, so I mean, what even, you know, by today's standards, it was so far for sure, so I think that's a lot of what probably is in the ground up here as far as that.
you know, our water is pretty expensive. Our water is everywhere, so it's the sewer piece that we not really focused on. You know, our sewer plant runs at less than 50% capacity. It's on average 200,000 gallons or so, and I think we're 500,000 gallons capacity. Is that something?
800, we're permitted for 800,000 a day.
And we run 200 to 300, I think.
Yeah, around two to
Somebody had some foresight.
Absolutely. Yeah, foresight for sure. And the water plant to that extent, you know, on a busy day, you know, like this summer, 700,000 gallons, 800,000 gallons, we're permitted. It's a 2 million gallon plant. You know, we're permitted out of the reservoir at 1 million. The plant could do 2. So our issue is more out of the reservoir that we've not ever gone back to revisit. We could, we haven't, but we've never approached the maximum capacity there. And like I said to you all during the budget process, we actually have seen our quantities of water production going down as we put meters in. We've found leaks. We've dealt with issues like Main Street and others. So there's a good part of, from a conservation standpoint, but maybe a little bit of negative on the revenue side, is that our overall water sales have declined. We've looked at more efficient toilets, and showers, sinks, and things like that. I'm sure play a contributing factor into that. So capacity wise, my point is we are beyond okay on capacity. We could double on the sewer side and still be okay for the most part.
Just gotta get it there.
Gotta get it there. Gotta get it there. That's exactly right. So a big piece of what's coming up, and I think everybody kind of agrees, let's get some numbers of what this looks like and what we're talking. Is that fair to say? On the water side, we're kind of going back to the original list we've had on our inventory. So we've had to put together an inventory in the last couple of years because state mandated of our water lines. And so we'll start there and start determining maybe different segments and what that looks like. But with help of Public Works, if they've got high areas that are continuing to cause trouble, then that's something we'll discuss. I don't think we have those right now outside of maybe one particular area that's out there. So. Questions on water and sewer? Yeah, I put up here, you know, those different areas. This is what Doug put together Chapman back in January in this. So those are kind of the top 3 areas there: Laurel Park, Winter Trail, in that area, Country Club. Streets. We had a pretty extensive assessment done back in maybe 12 or so, Matt. What do you think on the streets? We're able to piggyback some of that because we've paved a lot since then to have an understanding of where our streets are. Our streets today are, again, kind of like our water side, night and day. And I wasn't here to recall what they were like prior to the most recent paving rounds. But we spent close to $9 million over the last 10 years on paving streets. Not every street's been paved, but just about every street has been paved in town. So our next round of paving, at least on the surface, isn't going to be anytime soon. I mean, it's not going to need to be started anytime soon. Not big projects. Maybe we've got some small streets. But planning ahead towards later years is kind of the thought process. Again, Doug Chapman and I had a conversation about what that may look like. And it's essentially being able to piggyback some of that assessment work that was out there with what is coming up But we've got some areas that we know we've got on Green Hill, we've got some road cracking and some things that need to be stabilized. We've got some in Laurel Park, or not Laurel Park, maybe we've got some of these types of things that we know that are going to be first, right? We need to take care of. You know, keep in mind your Main Street 221, you know, Go Forth and Wonderland Drive are all DOT maintained roads, so they're in charge of those. So we're talking the other streets primarily, but I think as a part of this, it does not hurt to go ahead and kind of re-up this assessment to get a feel for what our streets are going to maybe need over the next, say, 10 years. And sidewalk master plan is something you did talk about, and so that is the price to get a master plan for our sidewalk put together. That is including public input, that's including our survey. I don't know how much Doug went into depth at the winter retreat about what a sidewalk master plan looks like, but it not only is us and having our conversations about what our current inventory looks like and what the needs are, but then future expansion with sidewalks, and there's a public input piece or a couple public input pieces as well. I don't know how in depth we went on this. Matt, any conversations about the in-depth side of the master plan within that? But I know it's been talked about, so I want to, yeah.
It was brought up.
So that is the price to get a full master plan of what our sidewalk system currently is and what we may want it to be, including our expansion areas.
To include repairs.
Current inventory, not cost to fix, but an inventory of our currents. Yes, our current system.
What needs repair?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So current inventory, what needs to be repaired along with any potential expansion, what that looks like. Yeah. And again, that can be a multitude of things. We can have a great deal of public input or not. We can, it depends on what areas. If we're talking expansion, that's where the public input would be crucial. If we're talking drastically changing our sidewalks, if we're looking to double the size of them, if we're looking to change up the overall, access that we have to them, we would want to have more public input. So again, I'm speaking on behalf of McGill and saying that number is kind of a max number. It can be different than that if we're looking to do less input.
Does that include cost estimates?
Yes. If we're talking extensive expansion, I would say it would probably be more than that. I mean, if we're talking certain areas as a part of that, what areas we're talking about expanding. Gotcha. Yet to be determined. We've talked about it since I've been here, Clark Street, Ransom Street. We've talked about a lot of different areas since I've been here. Do we want to do that? Do we want to focus more on getting what we have currently repaired, or is it a combination of both? Again, not saying this is how it's going to fall, but we spent a lot of time and effort on getting our streets paved over the last 10 years. We're going to need to spend more time as time goes on, but sidewalks is something that we've not spent a lot of time on. We've got some needs now that we know that need to be repaired, and we've not done a great deal of repair work over the last few years on our sidewalks. We've done some expansion. Bass Lake wasn't done, but it was done, since the last bond. We've added some sidewalk in some areas that we've not added as well. North Main as well.
That 35, that 300.
And I don't want to put Tasha on the spot, but this is what we absolutely have. We know there's about that much that we're trying to nail down with interest and premiums as well. So we're going to have some ability to pay for these studies and these things as well. Yeah. Exactly. If we were to head towards a bond, utilizing some of that to get us to where we need to is great use of that, in my opinion. Something that doesn't sell bonds. So Tasha and I met with our bond counsel and leading up to this meeting, and we talked about timing. When do we need to be ready if we're going to go that route? Getting us on the bond referendum, so to speak, is kind of that last piece, which is, around next May. we need to let the state know that we need to be on the ballot, right? So between now and then, we've got a lot of work to do on what we want to do. What do we want to potentially sell? What does that look like? Our dollar amounts, that type of thing. Building needs, not only dealing with our current space and our current needs, whether that's interior or exterior needs that are out there. We're talking about new spaces. Doesn't sell bonds. We were clearly told that. So water, sewer, parks, sell bonds. Sidewalks sell bonds. Buildings don't sell bonds. It doesn't mean we don't include it, but clearly the bond council that we work with, who works with about 90 different places across the state, said, do this if you want, but don't include this in the bonds. People don't vote on buildings. They vote on pretty things. They vote on water. They vote on sewer. So I put that up there from, we have not had a assessment of our buildings done from a formal standpoint. We've not had a CIP type plan put together of our current buildings, current space needs, not in a formal way. That's something that we may want to consider putting together, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a part of this bond. It's probably a bond killer, as we've been told, is that people aren't necessarily interested in brick and mortar. So I want to put that out there as we're talking about building space potential needs. We've never, at least in my knowledge, had a full-fledged kind of space study of what we have, what we need that's out there. Isolations. We systematically talk about things, but not full-fledged. Thoughts on any of this?
How would we do?
That's not McGill. So a lot of things are McGill, right? But there's entities out there that we could be recommended to, and I have been recommended, that would come in and give us a price, and they would do a space study need of current space, current inventory, future needs, roofs, large ticket items that are out there, along with square footage. You're talking about a Mosley or someone architects, that have done that past, Johnson and some others that have done that type of work. So that's probably $40,000, $50,000 to do something like that with the numbers I've been given. And again, this is a time, in my opinion, that we want to think about this stuff, because we want to have as much data as we can have going into a potential bond. Buildings may not be that piece that we put in there. So this sells bonds. So Jennifer's here, Corey's here. We've put together in the last couple of years a park plan, so to speak. I don't know what word we use for it, but park assessment, inventory, needs. Whether it's current needs, future needs, or expansion, or land acquisitions, all that stuff. We've put some of this together. We need to fine tune this a little bit more. We need to get a little bit more data, a little bit more detail, or update on some of this stuff as well, as we start thinking about making some decisions about what that may look like. But if you're looking in any particular order, parks and water and sewer sell bonds. That's what we've been told repeatedly. And so I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds, being primary focus on this. Needs to be those directions. And I think our goal is, yes.
I've not seen anything with stormwater.
So I didn't put it up here, but that would be streets. So a stormwater assessment is something that we have not ever done, right? So we've done paving ditch lines, we've done that, but we've never put together a stormwater assessment and what that would
Doug went through one time and looked at the majority of our ditches and everything, and what should be grass, what should be burned,
Correct.
what should be paved.
Correct.
And I know we had that plan done, and I know we got nowhere near through the bond of getting that accomplished, I'm just curious.
We can include that in that paving assessment, street assessment, include the stormwater as well. I think that would be good to do that. Again, it sounds kind of like a broken record. this is, again, the time of year, or the next 6 months to get this work done, to give us real numbers of what we're looking like, so we can have that determination. So we can absolutely add the stormwater piece to it.
Because I worry at some of the places, Matt, that we're looking where the streets are starting to fail on the sides, if that's not a majority of that causes because of the storm drainage.
Oh, yeah, there's some of that for sure. I mean, we just had a conversation today with a storm drain, I think, that was failing, that needs to be replaced. A lot of old rusty galvanized and stuff that's in there that's, yep, that's a part of that.
So it sounds like we got a lot of information gathering to do in the next 6 months.
And I think that's the, to the goal there before, we kind of skip on to the next or maybe take a break. But if we're kind of in this agreement, and that's kind of what I want to gather some feedback on, that we believe we are heading in that direction, or at least to talk about between now and the winter retreat is when we need to get the work done. To be able to have the winter retreat, I think, to be able to use that time to help prioritize. Because then we're only talking another 90 days or so until we have to make the determination exactly what we're going out to the voters for. Because we'll need to put all that within the ballot, the referendum, put all that out there.
We're gonna look at water, sewer, expansions through bond, which would be a separate bond, that'd be a water sewer bond.
Every function would, so we would have a vote water, vote sewer, vote park and rec, vote streets. Every function is separate.
I think we definitely need to look at that. Stormwater. And maybe it's a paving project.
My math's right, we got about $120,000 worth of information yet. 25,000
At least, yeah, absolutely.
in the next 6 months.
Of which we'll get finite numbers and bring that. Of course, you'd have to prove the contracts and what that looks like. We can get on that pretty quickly. We probably have some monies available to help pay for some of this. Yet to be determined. We'll get there in the next little bit and what that looks like, but I think we will. I mean, I think we'll have the ability, but yeah, it's a good chunk of money to spend to get us the data and the information that we need to be able to make some determinations.
But today's point, we need that. Whether we do it in 2025 or not, we need the data. We need the data now, whether we do it in 2025 or
We're gonna make more
2026.
decisions, I think.
Well, we'll talk in a few minutes about on the water sewer side. This will set us up for a conversation that we've not ever really been able to have, which is our impact fees or our system development fees. And we'll come up with that in just a few moments, but you need this data to be able to accurately put together if we're going to go down that road, which is essentially putting system development fees or what used to be called impact fees out there for new development. Something we've never done, not to the extent that the general statutes now require us to. And so gathering this data, whether we use it for bonds or not, would have some benefit to it, potentially, and what that looks like. Fair? Yeah, so our goal, I think, is to have that comprehensive list of our, what we call a capital improvement plan, but our CIP by our January winter retreat. And that number is going to be whatever it is, but we'll then be able to sit down and hopefully identify and prioritize based on what we have there, not only with the needs, but the cost, of course, and how much we feel comfortable. That being said, we'll work unilaterally or we'll work uniformly with our financial advisors and bond counsel in helping us put together data to give understandings of what 10 million or 15 million would cost and what that would look like. And that's exactly the same approach that was taken last time. It was just 11 years ago, 12 years ago when that was all being done. So that's kind of our thought as staff right now is working towards. Same time as information is being gathered, we're going to work towards getting the financial side and what it would potentially look like so you can have that information as well. Because we know we've got debt rolling off, we've got some capacity coming up, but that may give us some fluctuation or some ability there to kind of backfill. All right. So I got several other topics that may take a little bit. You want to take a break or we? Okay, take a break. Okay.
Yeah, for
For taking a break.
big segment of the day is other items. Starting with the TDA ordinance. Tracy's not here, but something that I think has been mentioned is the current wording of our ordinance. So for a little background, the town, through a local bill, through a local act, established the TDA, but the town established the parameters of it through an ordinance. There was a TDA establishment ordinance. That went through, and section 2 of that ordinance talks about the appointment of membership. And so the Blowing Rock Tourism Development Authority shall consist of 5 members who shall be appointed and approved by the town council and shall also be voting residents and or taxpayers of the town. And that shall be selected as follows. Town council voted back in 19 to make the last change, and that was at the at-large. This is on the lodging. So this is group 1, otherwise known as lodging. We currently have 2 appointees, and the wording says 2 members shall be individuals who are affiliated with the businesses that collect the property tax. That piece of it is not the request, because being affiliated with the business is exactly what the TDA board has suggested. Pete's on the TDA board, so I'll let Pete kind of weigh in. You know, I put here to consider, or they're appointed as a need. So Pete, you want to kind of weigh in the thought or the conversation with the TDA board that was had last month?
Yeah, it's, the discussion came up, I guess, the new owners of, Chitola have taken over, and then I guess there was this discussion with Greg about their participation, and they said they were interested, but maybe they're not here, could they designate somebody? And so that was the question that I think they wanted to forward to all of you, to figure out how we want to handle that, because it might come up in future discussions. So Melissa, I know you've been in the hotel business, so what do you think?
I can see this becoming an issue now, because I know just like that whole section that we were on Main Street, you know, there used to be, there was 5 owners, because there was the Boxwood, us, Meadowbrook, Azalea, and Mountain Air. Well, now it's 2 owners and 5 properties, so you start running out of people that can serve, and if they were able to appoint their managers or something to serve for them, I can see where that would be beneficial. And then like Embers is a prime example. Their owners are on property, but they have been as their GM. So I can see where it would be. It used to be where all of us lived, you know, we owned our own properties and we lived on property and we were involved in the running, but it's not that way anymore.
So Shane, back to what you were talking about, I mean, how do you all feel about this situation? I mean, is it something we need to change the ordinance?
So in order to change the ordinance, it wouldn't go before planning board, it would go before you all. We would have to have a public hearing. So we would just need some direction today to put it on a future town council agenda for a public hearing and discussion to change the ordinance. Again, it's not land use, it doesn't go to planning board. It's an ordinance, so it does have to have a public hearing.
I mean, I think that's good, but there is a catch there. It says a voting resident. A lot of the property owners are not voting residents.
Correct. So ever how we change, and we would get Tucker involved in the wording of this, right? But this, I wanted to put, this is the current wording of all members. So this is, all members must be voting residents and or taxpayers. So, you know, how we word this down here to allow for a designee, yet to be determined on the exact wording of that. But I don't think we're asking, I don't think TDA board's asking to change the overall taxpayer and or citizen, the voting citizen, just for an appointee of this one.
Right.
And so how we word that, we would need to get a little
I think
sense.
it's a good idea. I mean, we have.
Yeah, and it's still up to us to whoever we appoint and whether we want to appoint their designee anyway.
The TDA didn't want that to be passed along. They, if the Embers GM applied, that would be obviously up for you all to approve, you know, as a part of that designee or something, or vice versa.
And if I remember right, it seems like at some point it was changed and the taxpayer part was put in there because of places like Chatola and stuff, because like
You-
the tar
you should
buttons.
not be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This was changed, I
because
think,
they
in
weren't residents.
14, 15, 16 time
Somewhere
frame.
around there, that was changed because not everybody was a resident of the city limits. Cause at one time, it was talking, didn't we have the original wording was a large property and a small property?
Yeah.
And we changed that, so it's been altered multiple times since the
I think
original.
it's a good idea.
And you're right, as our older owners have aged out, their families have not really wanted these.
Are you calling Melissa old?
That's what I was wondering, I'm like, are you looking at me?
Miss Emma's like me.
Oh, you're referring to the in-laws, okay.
Yeah.
Police have gone, you get it.
You know, they sold out and most, you know,
Yeah.
you're finding out most of your businesses are becoming absentee owners, unfortunately.
Yeah,
It'd be nice if they were here.
living on property is, that's a gone by era now.
How many groups are there? There's lodging.
There's lodging, retail, restaurant, and.
Retail and restaurant together in that large.
In that large, yeah. So,
Have we had this issue with anything other than lodging?
No, our retail or restaurant folks have been pretty consistent. One being Dean Wallace, who's been on for ever, I guess. You know, our at-large, has recently changed, our council member. So one's restaurant, sorry, and then, right, two lodging, one retail, one at-large, one council member. That's what it is. Yeah, so Pete's the council member, the at-large one was changed back in 2019. The one retail / restaurant is Dean Wallace, and then two lodging, so there's a total of those positions.
So Shane, do you need a motion to move this forward?
Well, I think timing, you want to hear it in July, you want to hear it in August, you know, you have a time in which you want to hear it. Would we need to do 30 days on this, or just, this is not the plan board, this is changing the TDA ordinance.
And then we'll vote on it.
So we can't do it today.
Is it the town code?
No, just TDA ordinance, just establishment ordinance, so there's no code there. So just
Just
typical notice, right, of meeting. So we can do it anytime, we just need it, it wants to be a typical.
But it's got to be a public hearing.
It does, it doesn't have to be 30 days or 10 days, it's just, because it's not in the town code, it's not in the land use code, this is just the TDA establishment.
30-day notice.
It's just,
No.
no,
No,
it's just an ordinance.
Just ordinance, just public notice.
Let's do it for July.
A couple more items I've got on here, we talked earlier about developing the CIP plan, this full service capital improvement plan. Something that we've never fully established is what used to be called impact fees or availability fees, are now called system development fees. And so, you know, a definition of what a system development fee is a charge that's imposed on each new customer or development that generally, you know, offsets the incremental cost of replacing existing and or constructing new capital assets to provide capacity that will continue to meet the demands placed on the system by each new customer development. Essentially, new water customer, new sewer customers will pay a fee. That fee is associated with the combination of all the future capital costs that are out there. So, for instance, if we have McGill come in and do a full-fledged capital improvement plan of water and sewer needs over the next 20 years, they then take that and break that out into incremental costs that we can then charge new customers to help pay for that cost. And so that's called system development fees. It was established under North Continental Statute 160 back in 1819 timeframe. We've never taken full advantage of it. We've done different things here, like a per bedroom cost, but we've never taken advantage of what would be a full-fledged system development fee. Again, we're talking about studies, right? It's a little bit less, it's about $40,000, because it's a combination not only of McGill's work, you actually have an accounting firm that puts it together, and they take that data that McGill put together, and they put together over the next X amount of years, here's what an allowable or acceptable cost would be for new customers.
How
And
is
so-
that different from our current back home fees?
Don't know what that would look like. So I would say that, you know, what we charge right now may be more or less than what this Doesn't mean we have to implement it, but the timing of doing this would be, let all the work that we're talking about be done and have that, and then we would have this study fall on the end of it. And so it may not be ready by January is what I'm gonna say. But as we're doing all this work, it would make sense to go ahead and, in my opinion, to go ahead and have this, because it may be worthy of us considering implementing. And primarily where this comes in, the biggest bang for your buck is new developments, big developments, not single family homes. But as we get hotels or new resorts or that type of thing, then you have it. So we don't have a great deal of knowledge right now of what that looks like. And it may not be worthy. I mean, the $20,000, somewhat immaterial to be able to get to this point, but we don't know what the outcome's gonna be of it. We don't know what that's gonna look like.
You pretty much gotta consider what's left to be developed.
Yeah, and that's another thing is we may not have enough property that's worthy of it to be developed that's out there. But currently we have not gone through this process to be able to determine. And we don't need to make this decision today. I wanted to put it in here. Pete asked me about it. Can we charge new developments for future cost? You can, but you gotta use this method to get there. And that's system development phase. And so once we get through the next 6 or so months worth of planning into the winter retreat, we can determine if we want to have this kind of piggyback on that backside and put this together. And if we use it, great. If we don't, but right now we don't have an inclination of what this even will look like. But just want to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah. What we had been doing was based it on flow rate that's established in the building code for a new project. And then for residential would be a bedroom charge. But that is separate from tap fees, where it would be time and materials, and that's a pretty standard charge if someone's gonna have a new tap. But the availability fee, what we call it, the way that we go about arriving at a figure was based on the flow rate.
And that's per bedroom.
Well, per bedroom was the residential, but for any other type of business like a hotel or something else, there's a flow rate that's established in the building code. And we use that times our fee structure.
Come on. Use an estimated flow rate.
Yes, so it was for the Embers, I want to say it was $115,000, I think. It was based on, and that's already set in the building code, a flow rate based on hotel use. Restaurants have a different use, flow rate.
So
this would be
have this development fee in place. It's just not. We don't know if we're getting enough or
We've never accurately looked at it from a future cost, which is what we really probably need to. And where this comes into play, if we do expand sewer, a big piece, this is water and sewer, so the water side may be somewhat tapped out unless we have 7 acres or some other property redeveloped. The sewer piece, this would be maybe worth it as we do expand sewer to help us offset some of the cost. There would be a fee that would be charged within.
what's the fee per bedroom residential?
$750
$750.
water, $750 soup, $1,500.
$1,500.
Well, isn't the state starting to get away from impact fees?
Yeah, so they now have stopped calling it impact or availability. It's
Right.
now being called system development fees. And there's even a push to potentially eliminate those.
That's what I'm talking about,
That's the home builders.
That's the home, yeah, so this may be a new point in January. But
Home builders want to
We're not
build
doing
everything for free.
we can't do it right now because we need to get all the data first. We're gonna do that as part of the bond. We may just want to spend a little bit of extra money and figure out if we're charging enough. But yeah, to your point, there has been a push for a number of years of getting rid of all of the potential fees for development by the homeowner association, and the General Assembly is not taking it up yet, but we'll see.
That's a big lobby.
So this is just to put a pin in it, talk about it later. But Pete had asked me that question just a few weeks ago. I said, well, let me include some language because it's not as simple as just doing that anymore. They've kind of changed that. Last big topic I have is employee housing. So this
So this is going to employ council members know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
okay, yeah.
One of the slides is helping determine potential parameters, so.
Well, I went by Zach Tate's old house up there.
So, I will let, Mr. Matheson talk towards this, because he's probably the closest to it. This is, something that, I know he's very passionate about, and spent a lot of time researching and talking, but, I've got a few slides here, so, why would we even consider talking about this? So Dave, that you may not know is if you look at North Carolina Housing Coalition, Watauga County, for Watauga County is the 99th county out of 100 in housing affordability or cost burden. Hyde County's 100. So we are the next two highest from a cost burden. Hyde County on the coast.
Wow.
Oh, that would be,
Correct.
that'd be
That's gonna be.
out of banks.
So we're 99th out of 100 in the wrong direction. So number one, does anybody want to guess? Alexander County is where I came from. So most affordable housing in the state of North Carolina.
And there's a reason.
Yeah, so I went from medium home sold in 2024 so far is $565,000.
And that's Watauga County.
And that's Watauga County. Average rent right now is over $1,000 per bedroom. All of Boone is renting per bedroom. We don't necessarily do that here, but most of the new apartments in Boone are renting for $1,600 per bedroom. Yep. So they are quite literally $6,000 rents being paid for 4-bedroom units in Boone. I saw it last night. I looked it up. So another reason to talk about this is if it's not just the cost. Over 50% of our staff currently live outside of this county. Of our staff in here. So
Outside of the county.
outside of the county. We have quite a few that live outside of the state. We've got several live in Mountain City and Johnson County. Yeah. Some that live close. Majority of our counties, Caldwell and Wilkes, is probably our two. Some Ash, some Avery. It's where most of our folks are. But these are just some things I put up there of why we were talking about this. Housing's expensive up here. I think everybody knows that. It's next to the highest in the state from a cost burden. And that cost burden is defined as percentage of your income going towards housing. That's how they determine that. So how much percent of your income do you put towards housing? We're 99 out of 100 on that. So, benefits, we've talked about the academy to death, which is great because we are getting great reviews and our employees are fantastically happy with it. What we did there was look at a percentage of the market, what our cost is, and we determined to do a portion of it. We talked for a bit about the academy being income-based. We didn't go that route. We went the market rate. We did roughly 50% of the market. If you're talking housing, you can talk about 50% of the market or percentage of the market, or you can talk about income-based. There's different things. As we started looking into this, can the town of Blowing Rock offer housing to its employees? The answer to that, as of right now, is we need a local bill to give us full legal authority to do so. It's been done. It's been done in a number of places. Durham's doing it right now. I've got an example of what that looks like. Transylvania, Dare, Buncombe. There's a lot of counties, a lot of towns that have put local bills. The way that it has been in the past is that the local bill starts with the county. Watauga County and the incorporated areas of Blowing Rock, Boone, that type of thing. It doesn't mean we would have to start with the county. Does not mean we have to, because the city of Durham and others have just done it on their own. So we've had conversation over here about what would that look like. And so, Doug, you want to kind of weigh in on your conversation with our local House representative?
Yeah, I've talked with Representative Pickett, and he said he would be more than glad to do a local bill for us. We'll word everything the way that we would like for it to read. But he said he'd be more than glad to do it because Durham just got through doing one just for their school teachers. And they just finished one on affordable housing that they got funding federally. Right now, not jumping into what Shane's getting ready to go into, some of the places that we'll be looking for funds will be, the state's not doing hardly any money on affordable housing. But we have been maybe offered some money for infrastructure. We haven't talked to, on the federal level yet, of trying to get some money there, but Durham was able to get some money on the federal level.
That was for affordable housing.
That was for affordable.
Rent housing.
Right.
And I read up on that, and once you get the feds involved, they're gonna dictate to where if we can do it without getting the feds involved.
Well, I was just bringing that up. We haven't went that part yet. You know,
I think you need to work on getting the bill set up right.
First thing I work on is getting it through this group before I get it through anybody.
Now, does this group have to vote on, this group votes on it before the bill?
No, so the goal of today was to introduce this topic, because I don't think the topic has been introduced in a setting like this, right? So we've talked about it. I know we've all kind of talked different pieces of it, but the chance of today, or the theme of today, or the point of today was to introduce it to everyone at the same time, get some feedback of it. To say that, you know, there's a lot here to go through. So, you know, one thing that we put up here, and I wanted to put in that first slide, is even kind of opening up, why would we talk about this? We know we have housing issues here. We've talked about it. The county's talked about it. There's been groups that have talked about it. You know, housing as a whole in Watauga County and North Carolina continues to be the number one focus point of about every local government of some sorts. And so a lot of places are doing different things about it. You know, for us, does it make sense to go into having this conversation like the county's having, which is affordable housing? They're looking at affordable housing. They've got property that they're looking to maybe turn into low income or workplace housing. This conversation is more on our employees, or what are we doing to help, you know, recruit and retain our
We can
employees?
do that legally.
With a local bill, we can. So everything with housing, and so back up, the reason I'm bringing this up, how I brought this about, was I've had a couple meetings with the school of government, their attorneys. Everything to do with housing is being recommended to have a local bill to give us explicit authority to do so, because
And to regulate.
that's right. The general statutes doesn't necessarily give you clear-cut authority to do any housing with public funds. Their recommendation, which is what everybody is essentially doing, is get explicit language in a local bill that says the town of Blowing Rock would like to do workforce housing for town employees. Here's some parameters, that kind of thing. Exactly.
And Ray said that the earliest, or Representative Pickett said the earliest that he could do this and would be willing to do this would probably be September.
So we've got some time to talk about it, but, you know, location we've talked about would be, you know, as of right now, we've talked about the laydown yard across from Thick Line, because we own the property. So we've started there with what could something look like there. Our in-house architect and council member here has put together some conceptual drawings. I'm gonna pull up in just a few moments, and I'll let you kind of explain what it could potentially look like. Again, just to give your mind a chance to be wrapped around what could you do on a site like this. But we know if everybody today says we're in full agreement, we want to kind of pursue this or see where this goes, absolutely, we got to work towards some things to get to a local bill to help craft the language that will go into it over the next few months. So today is just introducing it, kind of get some feel for what that looks like. But let me pull up a couple of things that's been worked on with the concepts. Again, start with A. David, is that good with you?
Sure.
All right, so let's pull up our first one and let David or Doug or whomever kind of.
I don't know how I feel when my drawing comes up and you start laughing.
No, I said I'm gonna start with B.
I was going to jokingly last night. It was kind of late. I was going to draw with a crayon in a house and stuff. So here's David's drawing, but I didn't know how
Smoke coming out of the chimney.
Cars, drawing into it. But obviously, so here's 321. Here's Main Street. This is our laydown yard or mole hill, or I don't know what the name of it is, but everybody's
Rock
rock pile. This is actually a 2-acre piece of property that we were able to obtain from the North Carolina Department of Transportation for essentially cost back when the road was being widened or after the road widening. And so, David put together a couple concepts. So David, I'll let you kind of take over and give the pointer to you, if that's okay.
Sure, remember shake, yeah.
So this green line is your property line, right? And I got this plat from Shane, and I think it's actually before the highway was done.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
I believe it
It's
is.
from DOT.
Given the width of the road here.
Okay.
You're right, Dave.
All right.
So, I'll preface this by saying this is not by any means what we should do, okay? This is merely a couple of hours of work to see what we could utilize that for. What could we fit in there within our current land use ordinances? So, as Shane said, I think it's 2.06 acres. But what's usable in its current state is about where the gravel area is now. And that's the green outline here. So if we were to grade it down or have extend over that area with higher foundation walls and all of that, we could probably get more in there. But at 2 acres, this kind of represents about the maximum we could do without asking ourselves for a variance. And I think I'm right here, Kevin. So using a duplex, I've got 4 units here or 8 units. 4 duplexes, 8 units.
Yes.
And each one of these units is 24 by 36. With that footprint, there's a lot of different options. You can have a 1-story, 1 bed, 1 bath unit. You can have a 2-story, 2 bed, 2 bath unit. You can have a 2-story, 3 bed, 2 bath unit. So there's a lot of different options that you could do with that. But the way I've drawn it is maximizing that out so that you've got 8 units with 2 or 3 beds each. Each one of those would require 2 parking spaces, so I've got 16 parking spaces. And I've also got kind of a common area here, and then over here is Flat Top Mountain, so there's kind of a view through here to the mountain, to the lake, and I put in kind of a common area of fire pit. It really doesn't show up well on this slide. But this is just a conceptual idea of what we could do. My concern with this property would be the visual impact from the adjoining roads. And if we don't move kind of past the gravel area, I think we could do that very well. I think multiple units with keeping under our 35-foot height, using gable roofs versus flat roofs or anything like that. I think we could do something that was aesthetically very pleasing. You want to go to the next one?
The property that just got passed is to the left of this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the property over here is what recently was passed.
Okay.
And their entrance would be over here. I don't know that there's an opportunity for us to share an entrance because it gets really skinny in here, and I think that would be kind of prohibitive. It'd probably require pretty extensive retaining walls and all of that. So, but I didn't consider that. So this one is a little more, I would say, neighborhood oriented. Instead of all your parking being centralized in one area, you can actually have 24 by 36 footprint with the addition of a single car garage on each side. So now each unit, same unit, but now it has a single car garage. So you've got 1 parking space in the garage, 1 beside it. I've got 2 duplexes, 4 units, and it's more of a residential street quality. Again, now the units are really in the center of this, minimizing the visual impact. So it's really more condensed, less units, so we don't have quite the density we did in its first scheme. And then because there's not a lot of yard, I put in another common area here on the view side. And then to meet our parking requirements, I had to add a couple of spaces over here for overflow. This is the only unit that doesn't have 2 parking spaces. So these are just 2 of potentially hundreds of different things that we could do. But it was more for just research to see what would fit, what could fit, and how we might utilize that. Any questions?
I'm just amazed because that lot looks so small when I come out of Food Line and you've got all this stuff in it. I'm like, a street?
Dave's amazing. He just, he make a mountain out of a molehill.
It's
We got 5 pounds of stuff in a 2-pound bag.
Imagine.
So back to some of the points, right? So again, why even discuss this? This obviously is being discussed from a housing perspective all over the state, all over the country it's being discussed. What's not being discussed is what we would say is kind of that forgotten middle piece, which is essentially our employees. And so a couple of our folks are here that I think can talk about recent conversations. It is difficult for the police department, I think they can share, when hiring police officers that aren't already here to find housing here. That's something that's come up recently. Are you going to say, Nathan?
Absolutely. That's a struggle we've faced for years now. That's why I always, when I face it, I was trying to include this information just to show what the median homes in Watauga County is, because it grows every year. We've lost officers because they can't find a different place where they don't have roommates. That's been an issue. We just, with this new hire batch we've been trying to do, that's a complication as well. There's qualified people applying, but they live in Sanford, Greensboro, and by the time they look at the house market, like, I don't know what application. I mean, it's not feasible for them to be able to afford even rent. I've got our new guy, Nathan Mitchell. He's paying $1,400 a month for a 1-bedroom. And I mean, that's wild. And that price only goes up with the bigger the university gets, more population that the county gets and stuff like that. So it's definitely been a struggle.
So if we get to the point where we're moving forward with this, right, this location, so, talking cost of what's out there, we put together, these are again hypotheticals, the 2-bedroom, 2-bath today put together was, I think, 1,112 square feet-ish, that's what it was. So, we use $300 a square foot to build. We've talked to a couple contractors. I know that's a lower number than what you're seeing out there, but again, you're talking building this in a townhome style, and so again, this number may fluctuate. I just wanted to put some things out there of what this looks like. This is not set in stone, but if we were to use $300 a square foot to build, that's about $325 per unit. For these are for the 2-bedroom units. If you amortize that over 20 years at today's rates, which are a little bit higher, that's about $24,000 annual that the town would pay in debt payments on a unit. If we were to charge even 50% of the market rate, again, and we may want to go a route of change, that based on income. But if market rate's $2,000 and we're charging $1,000, then obviously, and these are rough numbers, the difference is we're net cost us $12,000 per year, per unit or per employee is what that looks like. And obviously that changes as you're talking the size of the units, or the size of the complex, that type of thing. So, we've talked, at least a few of us, and I think that's how David kind of thought through that conceptually. Do you start with a lot of units? Do you start with 2? Do you start with, how many units do you start with if we go down this route to make sure that it's going to take a hold and it's going to be something that's utilized? I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, and I can't guarantee you this, that we've got people that are going to move into these instantly. If we're to build them today, we've got people today. And I think some people up here would name people in their departments right now that would move in there today, because some are living in basements, some are living with roommates, some have families living with roommates. Is that fair to say? So it's not only the recruiting side, we've got current employees that are living in some pretty interesting arrangements right now because they can't afford rent or can't afford housing somewhere else. And so, I want to let Doug speak because this is something he's thought through more than any of us on some of these reasons why and some of these thoughts and conversations you've had at the league and others, Doug, if you don't mind chiming in.
Well, it's started out as just a passion for me, is trying to see something that we could do. And Blowing Rock has been so unique. When we started the daycare, it kind of pushed it for me a little bit more because then we were one of the first to do that, to offer our employees something. And I've heard from the chief up there, among others, that that has been a good item in trying to offer jobs. That he's had, I think you mentioned a couple of people who've actually mentioned that they put in applications because we had childcare, you know. And I started looking at this, and then when we went to the league, and then when I took a tour of Winston-Salem and saw some of the things that they had done. And it kind of started again about wanting this. And so I come back and talked with Shane about what could we do. And we started looking at the laydown yard down there and what we could do down there and what we could eventually, hopefully, if the town wanted to, be able to offer as another way of retaining and recruiting employees. And right now, with some of the meetings I've had in the state, there's a lot of them are having to look at going this route. They're having to bite the bullet and do it on their own because they're not getting much help out there. It's not out there to be found. And to be able to, you know, you don't have hardly any employees now, you know. When I worked for the town, most everybody lives here. But, you know, you look now, we have very few employees that Matt's got a water leak, you know, the closest employee he calls in, you know.
It's him.
I was following, it's his phone ringing.
So it's something that I think that would be great if we decide to. It'd be a big step moving forward. And I thought it'd be something nice. And when David done these renderings, you know, we started looking at that wood the way he set her back. That's not bad looking coming into the entrance into Blowing Rock down there. So anyway,
I met with ASU.
food for thought.
Yeah, I met with ASU, their director of relocation. She talked about the two things that they struggle the most with, the same two things, housing and childcare. There's not a 3, there's a 1 and a 2. If you get housing, that's a huge step. 2 is childcare. And so obviously we feel like we've accomplished one of those 2. This is the one that's the biggest one that's out there. I didn't put the numbers up there on, you know, the town of Blowing Rock, because we're not necessarily, we're looking at the county as a whole. The town of Blowing Rock in 2024, almost $1 million is the average cost of a home that's sold here. It's $979,000, I think is what the average cost is. That's not feasible for any of our employees, obviously. And so 565 is honestly not feasible for most of our employees outside of maybe a few of our department heads that could, you know, with double incomes. But Doug and I talked about this early on after I came back. And so we've gotten to the point where we are, you know, can we legally do it? Yes, we would need to get a bill in place. Do we have the property? Yes, we do. Do we want to move forward with doing this? Yet to be determined. You know, as we look towards questions, and there's a lot of them, you know, do we own it? Do we own it outright? So if we were to do this, you know, we own the land, step number 1. Do you partner with a developer to develop the property, partner with them to manage the property, or do we as the town simply partner with them to build and we own and we lease and we manage the property? I mean, these are 2 or 3 of many, many things, right, that are out there to consider. You know, do you sell them to employees? That's going to get more difficult because if we're selling them to employees, now we've got a transaction that takes place, that what legal right do we have? We've got deed restrictions we can put on there. So as we talk with the School of Government, and we've talked to others, simple as the name of the game is what they shared with us. If we were to do this, their recommendation from a legality standpoint, all the things is that we own the land, we own the buildings, we lease them. We do 1-year leases or whatever we want to. We have an employee that's terminated or that resigns, you give them 90 days, you give them some amount of time. But you control it, you own it, you control it. You don't get into the back and forth transactions, deed restrictions, that type of thing, because essentially this is a benefit. And so, School of Government, again, their attorneys have weighed in on others. Is this an allowable benefit? Absolutely. As long as we're not discriminating based on age or sex or race, we can do this. It doesn't have to be for everyone. It can be for whomever. We can put together a lottery system or something. We have more demand than we have units. I mean, that's something that's been suggested. So we've got a lot of questions to answer if we're going down this road, along with just the typical parameters. If we were to get there, we opened up tomorrow and cut the ribbon, what does that look like? Lease terms, subleasing, is that allowed? Probably not. Roommates, is that allowed? What are we talking? There's a lot of different options. Good news is ASU is way down the road in doing this right now for their housing of their professors up on the Boydville side. They haven't started anything, but they have thought through pages of this stuff. And I've got some of that data. They've shared that with me for us to have some talking points on the parameters, the scope of how you want to put this together. But, kind of what we need today is discussion along, are we heading down the road, everybody maybe wants to head down, enough to explore it and get towards putting some language out there, or not, I guess. And what questions do you have that we can try to answer?
This is be good to move forward. At least go through the research. Doug's done a lot of research. You've done a lot of research. David, thanks for throwing those problems together. I mean, he normally charges $100 to them.
They Doug bought on.
It costs one Charlie Seller special.
It did.
I got some cholesterol up there.
Yeah.
Council, I think it's something to at least look into.
Well, getting a bill doesn't commit us to anything.
Does not, that's right. Does not.
Wait a minute. I think it's a good idea, at least. Anything we can do to retain good employees, attract good employees, puts us ahead of the game.
Well, I think that it's, if we do it on that land or whatever, we've got some flexibility to phase it. Like in scheme A, we don't have to do all 8 or all 4 duplexes at one time. We can do half of those. Proof of concept and do the others. Obviously, there's an economy of scale there, but I think it's worthwhile to look into further.
So the House involvement or a bill, is that determined if you can do it?
Yeah.
So we have to go to Ray first to find out, before we do anything, whether it's feasible.
Yeah, and we could talk to Ray and Ralph in more detail, but if they're taking this forward, what do you need from us? I mean, do they need us to help with the language? Do they need us to pass a resolution in support of them moving forward with it? Those are things that we'll determine soon enough. We wanted to make sure that this group was supportive to move forward before we went to them and had them start down the road of putting something out there. It's kind of what we wanted today, or in the future, not necessarily have to be today, as we think through this.
So I would echo what Charlie said, but Nathan's point, I think is really important as a recruiting tool for, and retention, which he's already gone through, painfully, unfortunately, to move this ahead. So I think, depending on what Ray can do, I mean, if he can get a bill, then I would say, let's do it.
Doug, when you mentioned Durham has done this, exclusively for teachers. Do they rent? And do we know details about how, they're implementing that?
They went through a local bill also, and the language was quite extensive, quite a few pages long. Actually, the manager has that language and everything, had it sent to him, he has that. But unless I'm mistaken, I think theirs was just rent.
Correct, so the push that we're gonna see right now is with teachers, and the reason for that, is that the State Employee Credit Union has put together a plan for housing for teachers at 0% interest. For any local government, school board, et cetera, that's looking to build housing or renovate current buildings, they're leasing or they're lending money at 0% for that purpose. It's not extended into municipal yet, but it may. I think this is their pilot program. They got a certain amount of money that they're putting out there, and that's kind of where this big push is becoming. But it's the same type of thought. If it's for teachers or employees of the town or the county, it's the same, exactly the same thought. But the reason we're seeing teachers being pushed right now is because of the almost free money that's being lent by the State Employee Credit Union. That being said, they're only doing it on 24 units or above. They want to see big scale projects coming in. You know, we're looking to do it smaller here, so we may not ever fit within the parameters of what they put out there. So when we put together numbers, we're looking at if we went out and borrowed, as we would typically do. But if we do it in phased-in approaches, it may not be necessarily for us to do that. You know, it depends on how much money we're talking about extending out each time. Maybe something we put in the budget and we want towards. So there's different options there, but the Durham language, there's other counties and other languages out there that I can give you all examples that do teachers and public safety and municipal workers.
Okay.
There's, yeah. So for us though, not necessarily waiting on the county and others, I think would be something that would probably be critical for us if we want to move forward with this.
Let's do it.
They have research assistants in the legislative that do nothing but research how to write the bills. So that's not an issue.
Y'all,
And I know, one of the things that a lot of the people I talked to also, it wasn't, we're getting competitive here with our pay. We're trying anyway to get competitive with the pay. The biggest problem was it didn't make any difference if you can't find a place to live. No.
I think, I'm all for, I think it's a wonderful idea.
okay, got it.
I think we do have a lot of questions though to sort out.
Oh gosh,
Oh,
Yeah.
so let Melissa write the bill.
Do what?
I'll let you write the bill.
absolutely. So I'm hearing head towards conversation with Ray and Ralph on what that looks like, and getting some language put together and giving y'all some updates. But yeah, we're a long ways from home on getting something like this put together. But that would be a first step to see whether or not we can even get it through state. I don't think there's an issue with it, but
I don't think so.
we'll have to see and determine that as we get into the next steps.
Sounds good.
In the meantime, I will do more research with others that are doing it, lessons learned. We'll probably get to the point where we take some field trips and go see some of these things. I think that would be beneficial and learn, because that's the best way to do this stuff. Is just like the child care center. We've taken, how many people on tours and conversations about lessons learned. That's what they're coming here for. They want to do it. So tell us what you will do again differently. Tell us where your holes and your landmines were. We'll do the same class. We'll probably figure out, take some trips to some of these places and see what they've done and learn some lessons about the parameters on leasing and renting and all that. All right. What else did I miss? Because that's all I have there. What questions do you have on anything we've talked about? So we kind of went through current projects, updates on what's going on, which is a good amount, into some things we're going to have to really start working on soon to get some data and information on planning for retreat and potential bonds. Some big picture conceptual things here with the housing and what that may look like. What else?
I think you covered it all. Did well.
How come downtown district.
Municipal Service District,
Yes.
What?
municipal
That's
service
something
district.
I don't want us to forget about.
Okay.
I think we need to explore that more. I know there's not a great deal of money there, but it's something.
We've never really dove in to get exact numbers of what a penny would add, or 2 pennies would add for like a downtown service district. You know, the work that Boone's doing downtown with their sidewalks right now is being paid for by their DDA. I mean, that's, I think almost all of it's being paid for by the money they've collected, so they're,
The Merchants Association.
yeah, it is.
We came up with a number about
Yeah,
almost 18 years ago.
18 years ago, we came up with numbers, so we're probably gonna update that. So we can get some updated numbers on tax value.
It wasn't much then, but now it's totally different.
Well, and now I think you could argue that, you know, maybe Sunset is included in that. I mean, not just Main Street. You may have some other areas. Depending on what this downtown development group does, you could include some areas with some of those pieces off of it. And what that would look like.
I think it's justifiable. I think certainly something we should consider.
Yeah, let us get some data of what that looks like based on kind of our current footprints and values. Be glad to. I think we talked about it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, a little bit, but it didn't go far. Yeah, it's been a while. Been a while now.
Yeah, I can't remember. Dollar amount was
One time it was 45,000, I want to say the number was.
Yeah.
And that was just that was like town center.
Yeah, it wasn't much last time. We didn't know how much we wanted to
Can't
put
remember if
on.
that was before the rebound.
Before, it was. So we've had some changes. We could definitely put it together. You know, what that's used for is, it's gotta be used within that footprint, right? So whether
No
that's
problem.
sidewalks, trash, you know, right, it's, if you charge it on Main Street, money goes on Main Street.
Trash cans.
Trash cans, trash pickup.
We good, council?
Well, thank you all for your time
Man,
job.
and effort
Cheers.
today.
Cheers.
Department heads,
Man, cheers.
thank you, staff.
Yes,
Thank you for lunch.
Do I
yes.
have a motion? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.